Each and every one of those Spider-Man movies were pretty damn challenging. Dragged me to hell. I was on familiar ground, like you mentioned. It's a simple horror film. There wasn't a lot of pressure. I love playing in horror, but working in that big budget arena with so much at stake, with much beloved characters that Stan Lee created, and people really hold them so dear to them that you don't want to mess up. And I messed up plenty with the third Spider-Man. So people, hated me for years. They still hate me.
They give you shit for that
all the time. Yeah.
Why? What do they say?
We hate you.
Just a non-specific.
I wouldn't read into that too much. Yeah, you're just kind of trying to dig in, and I wouldn't think about it.
What do you think they're being?
Don't unpack that. Don't unpack it.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Choose a side in a Clone Wars.
Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan, and in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to Clone Wars, where two similar pieces of media clash to be crowned champion. Two go in, and only one comes out. Spider-Man, Spider-Man, radioactive Spider-Man. Yes, we're doing some Spider-Man content. I know you guys have been dying to hear me do some more Spider-Man content. I've done far too much Batman content with my guests today, but we're here, and again, the patrons chose. They went with my mad idea not to do what we had previously chosen, which was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But we are going to be talking about two Franken films, you might say. And I'm here with my guest today, Dan Keatis, to talk everything wall-crawling, web-slinging, spider-sensing fun. Welcome back to the show.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm very good. Yourself?
Good. I'm good. I know how well you are because we've spent the afternoon together.
We have.
And it's been a lovely afternoon, I might as well.
Yes, yeah. Of course.
It's been great. It's great to be here, back on Prattle World, which for the second time is my home.
As always.
I think, in fact, for the second Clone Wars episode is my home.
It is.
We recorded the Batman v Superman versus Civil War episode at my home, but it was a different home to the one I'm in now.
You do like to change homes quite a lot, even more than me.
Yeah, well, that's the millennial itch, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But yeah, who knows where I'll be living when we next record a Clone Wars episode. But yeah, no, I'm delighted to be here talking about these films with you. Am I all right to just share a little bit about how we came to be re-engaging with the Spider-Man films?
Yes, feel free.
So the wonderful people at Odeon Cinemas announced a couple of months ago that they were re-exhibiting all of the Spider-Man films. And I think it's part of the Columbia Pictures Sony 100-year anniversary thing.
I also think it's because Madam Webb didn't do too well.
Well, yeah, and they've got and the dog clearly has an opinion on that. If you caught that little sneeze, but you didn't even see Madam Webb, man. Yeah. What are you on about?
I have now, and I have strong opinions as well.
That's okay. Just they tried. Maybe hanging on to intellectual property rights isn't a good enough reason to make a film.
Yes.
But, I wish nothing but good things for the creators because, they did the best they could under impossible circumstances.
And we'll certainly talk about that in regards to these films as well.
Well, yeah, very much so. But sorry, I digress. I'm in full ramble mode. So
it is Prattle World, remember.
Oh, bless you. So we, when this was announced, we were both just in a bit of an icky place, mental health wise, I think.
Correct.
So we I wanted to chat with you before I shared that with your audience. I'm pretty open about it when I'm doing my Patreon podcast. I'm like, I really want to do these, but some days I can't. I just can't. Absolutely, and it's amazing how receptive people are generally, I think, these days to mental health discourse. But yeah, for sure. So I just saw these films coming back in cinemas as a really good opportunity to just make sure we're engaging with each other regularly.
Yeah.
That we've got something on a weekly basis to look forward to doing together. And I've just had the best time revisiting these films with you. So today we watched Spider-Man Homecoming. Last week we watched Amazing Spider-Man 2. And, just going backwards, we've revisited all the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films, all the Marc, Webb, Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films. And I've just been having the best time just revisiting the Spider-Verses with you, the Spider multiverse, if you will. I was actually feeling like, maybe the whole geeky superhero thing just isn't for me anymore. Maybe I need a break from it. Maybe I'm just burnt out with it. But revisiting these films is like, it's just rekindled that love. And I think it's helped me extricate how much I love these characters and these universes from how much I hate dealing with toxic fans on Twitter.
Yep.
And I still maintain that like leaving Twitter, now X, was the best thing I ever did. Because just I like not having to engage with toxic fandom and take it upon myself to sort of like politely and sincerely like make them see things differently or behave differently. I'm aware I'm rambling, just being able to re-engage with these films on these terms has been wonderful. It's been a gift, and I'm really glad that we get to talk about it in a Clone Wars episode.
Absolutely.
Because I really, can I swear? I really fucking enjoyed
cunting.
I really fucking bastard cunting twatting well enjoyed talking about Batman v Superman and Civil War with you. I'm very much a fan of I love listening to the Clone Wars episodes. Big fan of the format. Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. And it's probably the format I enjoy the most. I think most people get quite a lot out of it. And
as much as I would have, I was itching to talk to you about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Oh, absolutely, which we will do. It's not being put off completely. It's just because we were revisiting this, I was like, I think this might be something we can talk about. We're in the kind of milieu of it, watching all these films again, so why not?
I agree. I think this is the right podcast at the right time for us, and hopefully it is for your listeners as well. But
I think so.
They'll have to be the judge.
I mean, the patrons voted for this over Mary Shelley. Not that it was a tight one as well. It wasn't an easy choice for a lot of people. Andy was not particularly happy about this particular choice, but when is he ever?
Well, I think if your name is Angry Andy, I won't mind the fact that you feel adversely about things sometimes. Andy, if you're listening, don't worry, I still love you.
He does. Don't worry. He has some comments which we will get to, I'm sure. But yes,
looking forward to hearing them. I always like listening to Andy on your podcast. I always like listening to what he has to say. I don't always agree with him, but I always respect his opinions and think that they're well founded and well educated and well researched.
Definitely, couldn't agree more. So we're going to be comparing those. And again, it was a tight race between the two, but we will get to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I'm not kind of binning that off, that idea. We are going to do it, just not right now. And I'm not going to re-poll every episode. I know I've done the last two because I just thought I feel more like this. What if we did this instead, or what if we? And again, the patrons agreed. So here we are. So we are going to find out today. We will decide for everyone else what is the best of the worst Spider-Man sequels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I have quite a strong opinion about it now.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to seeing what happens when we run it through the filter of the Clone Wars format and the categories and whatnot. Yeah,
absolutely.
And before we start in earnest, I want to say, because I don't have a great relationship with Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah.
There are things about it I really like, and then a lot I don't. But I'm really like having come back from watching Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 with you, I'm really looking forward to sort of like, relitigating my feelings towards Spider-Man Far From Home, because I think I can really see myself really enjoying it, because we saw Homecoming today, and I was just sitting there thinking, fuck me, Pink, I forgot how good this film is. Like, I forgot how beautiful the little acting moments are. I forgot how funny the script is. I forgot how, like, beautifully it's paced and how, like, all the little bits sort of, like, interlock so perfectly in terms of cause and effect in the plot. I'm rambling again.
That's all right. It's all positive. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I kind of laughed so much in the cinema.
Yeah, we were laughing quite loudly.
We were, and there was only, I've noticed that as we go along with these films, there's less people turning up, weirdly, which I thought there would be more people turning up to the MCU stuff.
Me too, yeah.
Which is strange, but maybe it's because they're so recent and they're maybe fresh in everyone's mind. And again, I quite like Far From Home. I know a lot of people have issues with it. You know, I like it, and we did talk about maybe including it in here, but
we did, yeah.
I felt it wasn't quite as critically and commercially reviled, let's say, as these two particular entries.
No, very much. It's just the least good of a good trilogy, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
No, that makes total sense.
You know, it's the Back to the Future 3 of the Back to the Futures. You know, that's my least favorite one in my opinion.
Good analogy.
Yeah,
good analogy.
You know, and again, absolutely great film, amazing in all of its rights, but it's just not quite as good as the other two.
I hear you.
Which is fine. But yes, as always, Dan, we're going to go through the reasons for comparison first before we get there. Now, there's a lot of tropes in Spider-Man, and there's a lot of things that are similar about every film, and they kind of crop up, characters and ideas and father figures being gone and missed, and funerals, like both of these films end in a funeral.
Yep.
You know, which is kind of standard for the Spider-Man films as well. But I've tried to pick the ones that are quite specific to these two films. Yep. Again, they're not remakes. They're not, I did My Bloody Valentine. I didn't list anything there because it was a direct remake. So I was like, but with this, I thought there's reasons to go into, and there's more than I've listed here, and I'm sure we'll bring them up as we go along, but I'm going to list them now for your enjoyment and the listeners' enjoyment. They get a bit weird, some of them, so be ready.
We're here for weird.
Here we go. Both films feature 3 main antagonists. Both feature sequences of criminals stealing from armoured cars. Both films had somewhat troubled productions due to a lot of studio interference. Both previous entries had their composers leave due to behind-the-scenes shenanigans. Both films feature revelations about characters' deaths from the previous film entries. Several actors have talked openly about both films to either condemn both productions or defend them. 2 actors from both use the phrase 10 pounds of shit in a £5 bag to describe the experience. Both films had several installments planned and initially pushed ahead with them despite the poor critical and commercial reception. Both films are of a similar length. Both films feature the 1967 cartoon theme song played diegetically in both films. Both feature sticky substances making the shape of a hand. Both films feature characters with terminal illnesses. Both films feature villains who have a vulnerability to water, and both have open-ended epilogues.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Any others you wanted to add there that you could think of off the top of your head yourself?
I think they both, in terms of the content, no, but I think they are both, I can see the sincerity and earnestness in the story that the creators wanted to tell in both. I can see the meddlesome hand of studio interference in both.
Yep.
I can see where reach exceeded grasp in both. But I adore both for all their faults, because I think both have really genuinely beautiful, like, cinematic things going on, not just in terms of like superhero films, but just generally in terms of like beautiful acting, beautiful visual effects, beautiful production design. I just think they're both kind of compromised by trying to do too much too quickly and just deal with other shit outside the story, like setting up sequels or building cinematic universes, especially since when we consider how doggedly Sony wants to hold on to the Spider-Man rights. I mean, they have a good working relationship with Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige, but, there's a lot going on. And obviously Spider-Man is a cash cow that they want to milk until its udders are sagging and dry and spitting out baby formula,
So it all turns to webs, I think. Sticky webs of... And we've got Craven coming out later this year.
Yeah, I'm not craving, to be honest. I'll give it a go.
And I was not mad for Madam Web either.
No, I did want to catch Madam Web. I honestly did. I wanted to give it a fair shake, but I just never got round to it, and I had other things to see at the cinema.
It's on Now TV if you want to watch it, if you feel the The Drive. But
See, now TV is a Sky thing, and I just don't think it's a good enough reason to give money to Rupert Murdoch.
Fair enough.
I did
fair
for the
enough.
Snyder Cut. I
Yeah.
did that. I
You
got a Now
went for
TV
it.
subscription for that, but yeah, nah.
Fair
Sorry, Madam Webb. I'm not that curious about you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm like, and the only reason we watched it was to basically laugh at it, and it was one of those films where you get your friends round, you have a few drinks, and you watch it. And yeah, it's not good. It's not good on any level. But again, I'm sure the filmmaker had lovely, pure intentions.
Yeah, from what I
making
understand,
it.
it was her like feature film debut as well. So I just
yeah.
really hope that the reputation of that film doesn't preclude her
Yeah,
from future
absolutely,
opportunities. Because from what I understand, I've not seen it, but I've heard reviews and read reviews, and from what I understand, like the way it is directed is not.
No,
there's a lot wrong
no.
with it, but the
Yeah,
way it's
yeah.
directed is not one of them.
No,
sorry,
no.
I'm just determined to drag you down any fucking blind alley and tangent I can.
We love tangents. It's a tangent. 2 tangents going on at the same time. It's fine. We're all about it here. This is Prattle World. We usually go on much longer than we should. It's just the way we do it. But anyway, let's get back on track. Spider-Man 3.
Yes.
Sam Raimi's magnum opus.
I mean, it's. There's a lot of Sam Raimi just Sam Raimiing shit, which I'm all for. And thing is with this film, you can see the parts where his heart was in it, and it's like this is the story he wanted to tell. And you can see the parts that were he was told to do it, and he did the best he could, despite not really feeling particularly strongly about Eddie Brock or Venom.
Yeah, sure.
That's the main thing.
Yeah, let's call it what it is. But
or like sky surfing, snowboard things.
you mean the Night Surfer, one of Spider-Man's greatest rogues of his gallery?
Oh, let's not. We'll get to that. I'm sure.
Well, why don't, as a reminder, just in case people haven't seen this for a while, what is the general plot of Spider-Man 3?
Do you want me to relistate the plot of Spider-Man 3? Okay.
I want you to. It's a challenge.
Okay. So Peter Parker is he's doing well. He's in a good place when we find him.
Mm-hmm.
He's managing to balance Spider-Maning with his sort of like real world responsibilities, like paying the bills and bringing income in, and being a good partner and being a good nephew to Aunt May. He's very much in love with Mary Jane, played by Kirsten Dunst in this film. Their relationship's going really well. He wants to propose. He has that beautiful little scene with Aunt May where he says that I've decided I'm going to ask MJ to marry me, and they have that gorgeous little moment. So things are going well until his best friend Harry Osborn, who has been experimenting with his dad's Green Goblin performance-enhancing green mist thing, which turned his dad insane, but seems to just exacerbate his general anger from the previous film. So he is attacked by his friend, and they have a bit of a sort of like a tussle in which Harry is incapacitated, loses his memory for a bit. Peter meets, or we see Gwen Stacy in his science class, and they kind of have they have a very platonic relationship, but I think Gwen has a bit of a thing for Spider-Man after he saves her from a horrible accident when she happens to be doing a modeling shoot. Where are we else? So we've got
introduced to Sandman as well.
We're introduced to Sandman, who is kind of like a very classic Spider-Man villain in terms of random person stumbles into science thing and decides he wants to live a life of crime. We see in this film, by the way, that the reason he's turned to crime is because his daughter has healthcare needs. So thanks capitalism. Thank you private healthcare. That's very healthy. Obviously, only the children of the very rich deserve to not have their children die of cancer or whatever. I mean, it's kind of coded.
Yeah.
It's coded as cancer. We don't know exactly.
It's a terminal illness,
Yeah.
but they don't go into specifics.
So he stumbles. He's on the run from. He escapes prison, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
That's the stripy top thing. Yeah.
Yeah, his orange jumpsuit.
Yeah. So he escapes prison and stumbles into a pit where there's a spinny thing.
Spinny lights.
And it's kind of like, what is it? It separates matter from the electrons that hold it together. It's like,
molecular.
It's kind of like the Dr. Manhattan machine from Watchmen.
Yeah, vague sciencey something.
So he stumbled into that, and it turns him into a person who's able to sort of like he sort of calcifies and turns into sand, and is able to sort of rebuild himself in just an astonishingly beautiful visual effects sequence. He decides for his daughter he's gonna raise the money, turn to crime, and so there's that going on, and just me like. Me narrating the plot, like the broad strokes of the plot, just makes you realize just how much shit's going on in this film.
Overstuffed.
Yeah, so that happens. So he has an altercation with Spider-Man, and then
we learn he's actually the killer of Uncle Ben as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I was getting to that. But yeah, so we we revisit the scene from the first film where Uncle Ben was murdered, and we realize that the person who Peter thought killed his uncle was the accomplice of the person who actually did. We realised later it was sort of an accident. It was like a robbery gone wrong kind of thing. Like the shooting of his uncle was very much an accident. We learn that Spider-Man is given the key to the city. We learn that Mary Jane, unfortunately, not having the best time because she landed this big sort of Broadway gig, and the
weirdest musical you've ever seen.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's a real. I'm not educated in musicals, so
I think it's a real song from a musical, but it doesn't. I don't think it represents the musical.
Right, okie dokie. So she's in that, and she gets fired because she gets bad reviews from theatre critics. Which I don't think that's how it works necessarily.
No, I don't think so.
Like they normally wait for the run to finish. Like it's got to, those reviews have got to be pretty scathing for it to change before the run's finished. But yeah, so clearly she is not union affiliated because she should not have been allowed to be fucked so hard by circumstances like that.
Absolutely.
But you know, if things happened like they did in real world, film would be very, very dull.
So you got that parallel of things going like it's almost like she's on the same trajectory as Peter was in Spider-Man 2. Like things are going really poorly for her, but he's doing really well, and it's getting part of that ego's coming out of him. He's like, I'm Spider-Man, people love me, it's great, you know?
Yeah, and he gets to the point where he's like talking about himself a lot, and he's not as sensitive or attentive as he could be and should be, and we start to see him kind of drifting away from the Peter Parker that we know and love. We just see a little bit of hubris emerging from him, which is exacerbated by, just when you thought there was enough plates spinning, a big fucking alien meteorite full of symbiote black goo comes from space somewhere, and
vague space.
Yeah, vague space, and it latches itself onto Peter's little mopedy thing, and just decides it wants to live with him for a bit and feed off of his emotions. And so while he's having, he finds out about Sandman, Clint Marco being Uncle Ben's real killer. He's having kind of like a little bit of a feverish nightmare about it, and the symbiote decides to latch onto him, and then we get the black suit, the iconic black suit, which I think looks amazing, by the way.
I think initially I was kind of like, no, do the logo, do the white, do the Venom logo, and then I was kind of like, no, this kind of works. Apparently, looking up on the IMDb trivia, apparently it looked too much like an S&M suit. They tried it, but they were like, it's too much like that.
You can see, and when like I'm skipping ahead quite a lot, but so when we get Eddie Brock become the actual,
you get the logo then.
You do get the logo then, but it's also, I quite like how they marry it with the sort of topography of the standard
regular
black Spider-Man suit. So it's like you can still see the same webbing and the same sort of details, but they're kind of
distorted.
They're distorted. Yeah, they're distorted and crude. It's like the suit remembers that, but it's adapting to its new host, and I just think that's a beautiful little production design detail. So anyway, black suit. He has another encounter with Flint Marco, in which he becomes very enraged and thinks he's killed him. And then Peter decides that he really likes My Chemical Romance. And dyes his hair accordingly, and wears it accordingly. He becomes very, very cocky. He becomes
We'll get into it.
He decides to break into freeform jazz dance solos. He decides to be an absolute cock to his girlfriend through the medium of dance, and
then just accidentally hits her as well.
Accidentally hits her, and that's when he has a sort of like moment of clarity. He goes to a church just for a moment of solace, just as Eddie Brock, who is his photography rival at the Daily Bugle, the paper where he works,
dark mirror image.
Yeah, exactly. So they're both trying to get the best possible Spider-Man pictures, and there's a moment where Eddie Brock fakes pictures of black suit Spider-Man doing criminal stuff.
There's a competition by Jonah for someone to get an actual job instead of being freelance, and they have to find Spider-Man committing crimes, and Peter says, "You'll never catch him doing that."
Yeah.
And Brock's like, "Just you wait and see."
Yeah, so he doesn't, so he fakes it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'd think there'd be better quality control, really, for
New
York-based newspaper.
I mean, he could have taken a photo of him killing Sandman. That would have done it.
We see Spider-Man sort of like try and rip this black suit off. He bangs himself against a big church bell, and it starts to like fall off him because the symbiote hates Sonics. Two things they hate: Sonics and fire.
Hedgehogs as well.
They hate hedgehogs. Can't fucking abide them.
Blur hedgehogs.
Oh right, sorry. Yeah, I just thought you was just being surreal. No, I was like, I was going to ride that with you. I was like, yeah,
hedgehogs,
fluffy little adorable.
Yeah, extreme heat and Sonics and other stuff. Yeah.
So the symbiote suit falls off Peter, and it falls onto Eddie, creating Venom. And in a very hastily cobbled together scene, Venom and Sandman decide to join forces to kill Spider-Man. Meanwhile,
we're gonna get to this. We'll get to the end
Harry,
of the scene.
who has been bumped on the head, loses his memory, loses any sense of his complicated relationship with Peter Parker and Spider-Man, forgets that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Yeah, his dad loved him, apparently.
Yeah, I think has a much more rose-tinted view of his relationship with his dad, has lost any sense of like vengeance against Peter Parker for killing his dad, which he thinks he has. And so there's this wonderful little moment of reconciliation. We see the friendship between Harry, Peter, and MJ. We see when Peter and MJ's relationship goes wrong, we see Harry and MJ hanging out and having much better chemistry, if I'm honest. I think James Franco and Kirsten Dunst have better chemistry than Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst. And it just feels a little bit easier with them. Harry regains his memories, regains his beef with Peter, and the two have a fight in which emo black suit Peter, Bully Maguire, yeah, you all know the meme. So Bully Maguire critically injures Harry by like webbing one of his pumpkin bombs back to him, and so as Spider-Man is facing off against the combined threat of Sandman and Venom, Harry Osborn has a change of heart and comes to help because his butler Bernard the butler, not to be
the real villain of all these films,
not to be confused with suede bass player Bernard Butler.
Bill Paxton's dad as well.
Yeah, you told me that. That's a good bit of trivia. So he chooses that particular moment to say, oh, by the way, I know you've been obsessively drinking and like pinning photos of Spider-Man on your wall for the last 2 years. I think now's the right time to say, I had a look at your dad's wounds, and yeah, he was definitely killed by his own glider, and I can definitively say that he wasn't murdered by Spider-Man.
Yeah, it wasn't a No Way Home situation where he's going to jab him with it, the entire glider.
Exactly, yeah.
No.
So it's like, I'm deciding to say this to you now. You saw me losing my shit.
And losing half my face.
Yeah, you couldn't have said that 6 months ago, a year. But anyway,
as you do.
He got there in the end, It's about the journey rather than the destination.
So then Sandman and Venom team up. They kidnap Mary Jane. They team up for some reason. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and Mary Jane at this point is just fucking sick of being kidnapped. She's like, all right, okay.
Well, I'll get into Kirsten Dunst's feelings on that as well.
What thing are you going to suspend me on, 1,000 feet up in the air now?
And then Peter goes back. He's removed the suit. he goes back to Harry and asks for his help. He's all scarred, and that's when Bernard does the reveal.
Exactly, yeah.
And then he goes. Harry refuses. He goes. Bernard tells him. He thinks about it. Spider-Man's at his lowest ebb. Mary Jane's falling down. She's hitting Venom with cinder blocks. And then just in the nick of time, Harry turns up and he's like, yeah, just in the nick of time. He's like, yeah, a few minutes earlier would have been good as well.
Yeah. But like, I do think that's a nice little moment, and I love seeing them fighting together. And after, shenanigans ensue, and Spider-Man saves the day. He forgives Flint Marco for his part in the uncle's death, exactly. And things end on a kind of bittersweet note.
Yeah, I like it though.
And that is the plot of Spider-Man 3, I think.
It is.
Unless there's anything glaring you think I've missed.
No, I think you've managed to as best you can succinctly put all that
Has that
together.
been 2 hours yet?
maybe. But yes, it is quite a lot. And I feel like when we saw it, I remember the third act being very rushed. Even when we watched it again, I was like, bloody hell, this kind of... once the suit comes off him, it kind of just rockets towards the end.
Yeah, I think it's quite an achievement for a film to feel both overlong and incredibly rushed.
They did it. They managed to do it. The original plan was, I think, from the commentary I listened to, it was going to be the Vulture and Sandman.
That would have made more sense, I think.
And they were going to be in prison together, and then they were going to meet outside, and then they were going to team up again because of that. And I think they were going to reveal various things. And Avi Arad said, well, this is the third one. This will probably be the final one. We need to close off the Harry storyline. But also, we think you're too keen on the 60s villains, the villains you like.
Yeah,
and
because he was very much like, that was the era he grew up with, and he wanted to very much pay homage to, and I think the vibe is very much captures the like Stan Lee, Steve Ditko early Spider-Man issues.
Absolutely, like the struggling to balance the life and everything, and the villains are like somewhat kind of cartoony, but they're good and they're enjoyable. Doc Ock and Green Goblin, very kind of over the top as well. I think all the villains in all these films are somewhat to a degree over the top as well, but there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, they were like, we want Venom. And then they talked about, they talked to the writer and they were like, what if he was the ultimate version where he's a teenager or he's a young man and he's like a dark version. He's like, he has a better exterior than Peter Parker, but a worse interior. So his inner like soul and moral compass is worse. And he's more of a similar age. He's not this hulking, reporter that was wrongly, unjustly fired.
I remember reading when Topher Grace, and God bless him for thinking, I'm going to call myself Topher because the world does not need one more white guy called Chris. Way before the internet decided that was the case.
Yeah. Big comic fan as well.
Yeah, well, that's it. And he was like when I was offered the part, I was like, really? Because, he's meant to be much bigger than I am. He's meant to be in his 40s. Are you sure I'm right for the part? But I think the Dark Mirror aspect does work. I think it's just undernourished.
Yeah.
And I think it needed more time to breathe and it needed more development rather than being, an extra ingredient you throw in the stew at the last minute.
Yeah. And speaking of, you were mentioning the kind of Kirsten Dunst being in peril. She speaks very nicely on the commentary, and there is a moment where there's a bit of kind of, this isn't entirely what we had in mind. So at the end of the film, it wasn't meant to be Mary Jane who was dangling. It was meant to be Gwen. So she was the one who was meant to be in peril. And that was an agreement made by Sam and Kirsten Dunst when she came on board. They were like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this again. Let's do something different. Can I be part of the fight? Can I do something?
Yeah, because she does have two very similar peril scenes in the past two films. And so when you fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes around the third time, it's like, oh, okay, here we go again.
And I think you do see the seeds of those in the further Spider-Man films. You see the female characters have more and more agency as it goes on.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like with Gwen and with MJ in the MCU films as well. So I think that the seeds of that were here. Like her throwing the cinder block was again her idea, so she could be part of this fight. She apparently they reused one of her screams from an earlier film.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that was she refused to do it, or it wasn't as convincing this time, or that she was in a bit of a bad place. She was thinking about giving up acting. She was sick of giving to other people than giving to herself, so she wasn't in the best mental headspace. She used to go home to a friend who was also having a bad time. They'd watch American Idol and drink Pinot Grigio.
Fair enough.
And the stunt team as well did a thing where they dropped her and stopped it right at the last minute as a test. And she went, well, I'm not doing that again.
No, absolutely.
So which I think is absolutely fair. And they were calling her like this. She had like a nickname, like they'd asked for her to be on set and they call her like a girly girl and some really,
That's horrible.
Yeah. So I think she went through the ringer a little bit for this one. And Sam had to ask her to be in distress in that final scene. And he said it was the hardest conversation I've had to have because the studio said we need it. It's the two friends coming together to save her. It kind of makes thematic sense to a degree.
I mean, it kind of does, but I think it would have been much more powerful because like the whole thing in the previous films was it's Peter, Harry, and MJ.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
they're a little unit, and it's kind of a love triangle, but like the bonds of friendship are still there.
Absolutely.
Because by the end of the first film, MJ's already broken up with they've been out. She's been out with Harry and she's broken up with him. Decides she's in love with Peter, but they're still functioning as a group of friends. Yeah. So I think it would have been much better if it's like, okay, so you've got these two super powered guys. What can MJ contribute? How can she help? Maybe she's getting people helping to put people out of the way when there's shit falling on the ground. Maybe she's like helping to coordinate support. And
she does there's a moment where she leaps to save herself onto the big symbiote strands. So she's actively trying to save herself. She's not waiting for Spider-Man to save her.
There's stuff that she could have done, like either directly being part of the fight or as we'll go into in a minute, Spider-Man 2, but absolutely. Like the stuff that the love interest can do in an action sequence.
And I think I like Bryce on the commentary, Bryce Dallas Howard said, I think that was the right decision because I think if there was more Gwen in it, then perhaps it would lead to that and her being, threatened by Venom or being, and again, I don't know if this was in the original version because this was quite late in the production where they changed this. Yeah. So it was and it was a very tense production with the pressure mounting. The budgets of both of these films ballooned. So the pressure for them to perform well kind of ballooned as well. And I think there was a lot of that like pressure on Sam and even Toby says in the commentary, he goes, I've never seen you lose it, but this is the closest on this film, on this production, where you've come to like just breaking down, having a go at somebody because he's a very nice, affable guy, and he's a very talented filmmaker. I love his stuff. I love Quick and the Dead. I love The Evil Dead. I love Dark Man. All of his stuff I'm kind of a fan of.
Drag Me to Hell.
Drag Me to Hell was a brilliant one.
So much fun.
Which he did directly after this because he was like, I want to go back into that stuff, that kind of stuff that I love doing.
Feels like him being his most authentic self. That film
exactly,
really
and he said about this that he was going to come back. Spider-Man 4 was going to be his redemption story. He was like, I'm going to do this, and we're going to have the Vulture, the Black Cat, and all this sort of stuff. And again, there was a lot of pressure because again they said, well, this is the release date. Make sure you can do it.
Yeah,
and they. Again, applying quite a lot of pressure to him. They all speak very lovingly. All the producers and writers speak lovely about the stars and everything. But I feel like if you were speaking to them directly as those people, it might not be as fun a time.
For sure, yeah. Can I just backpedal a little bit,
please,
and show some love to both Kirsten Dunst and Bryce Dallas Howard?
Yes, absolutely.
And I thought of another commonality actually between the films. They both films try and turn a redhead into a blonde. To make Gwen Stacy a thing, and indeed this film turns a blonde into a redhead with Kirsten Dunst.
Absolutely,
but I just think she's I think Kirsten Dunst is such a great actor. I think Bryce Dallas Howard is such a great actor and I think a very promising director as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw Civil War, the Alex Garland film, quite recently, and Kirsten Dunst's performance in that is just fucking perfect.
I meant to see that. I
it's
really want
so
to see
good.
it.
I strongly recommend it. I think it's really good and real and vivid. and just superb. And like I was thinking about this yesterday. Actually, I was thinking about Kirsten Dunst and how she got her big break in Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah, she was great.
And she was what, 12?
Yeah, I think so.
11
13,
or 12,
maybe
13,
something.
thereabouts. And she made me believe that she was like, a middle-aged woman in a little girl's body.
No easy feat.
No easy feat, and just such a compelling performance. And I remember at the time, like a lot of the press being about like, so 12-year-old girl, what was it like to kiss Brad Pitt?
Ooh.
I know, right? I remember that vividly.
I'm going to get on some problematic stuff about Amazing Spider-Man 2
and
as
she was
well.
like, oh, well, it was gross, and I'm sure it was gross for both of them,
Yeah.
But I just remember thinking, like, I look back at the 90s and think they were quite a progressive time, but like shit like that, you would not get, and rightly so, you would not get away with say. You wouldn't ask like a 12-year-old girl what it was like to kiss a 29-year-old man,
And I think you'd be surprised with some questions that come up in interviews as well. And I think most actors now are quite quick to shut those kind of questions down. They don't put up with it. I think that was another thing that Kirsten Dunst mentioned in that interview, because she was like, before the Weinstein situation, before the Me Too movement, you just wouldn't say to somebody, "Don't call me girly girl."
Yeah,
it was a different world back then. It was just like, you just got to be respectful and appreciate things, which is not really on.
Yeah. So it's just such a toxic culture that's just festering away in the background.
Yeah.
And
I think she's cooled on the film now, like she's in the experience. I don't think she's quite as harsh, but I think because she it was in her contract and it was an agreement.
Yeah,
I think that's why she was quite upset about the situation and doing it again. And again, Sam felt bad, and he said, it was the hardest thing he had to ask. But yeah, I think they're both fantastic. I'll be honest. I think again, because of the way these films are, and because they're kind of capturing those old style comics, I don't think they write the female characters that well.
No,
I'll be honest. But I think the actors themselves bring that to life as best they can. I think they do a good job.
Yeah,
I just don't think the writing kind of supports those characters, because I think they can come across as kind of whiny and jealous and other kind of horrible tropes that female characters can come across, and I don't think that's what they're going for. But I think because of the way superhero films were represented at the time, society's moved on a lot, and the way that superhero films were designed and expected to go. Obviously we now have so many different superhero films in so many different ways, and represented in so many different ways, and different twists and turns, and different genres almost as well. That they've got better and better over time. I still think this Spider-Man trilogy is one of the strongest. I like the Marvel team up at the end. The some of the goofier elements I don't particularly mind in this.
No, I mean that's very much Sam Raimi's
exactly,
kind of tongue in cheek,
because he's a big Three Stooges fan, and there's a lot of that kind of wacky humor in it. I think it's Bruce Campbell's best cameo in the films.
Spot on. Yeah, brilliant.
I am French.
I am French. It's kind of challenging is in a kind of John Cleese in that.
Yeah,
it's good.
And apparently he was going to be revealed to be Mysterio in the fourth film.
Oh, really?
Apparently.
Okay.
So he was always an obstacle for Spider-Man, and now
I like that.
And
that would have been a cute little thing. Can I just go back to
of course.
MJ and Gwen?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Because I think both give good performances.
Yeah.
I think they both do the best they can with what they've got. But I think in both cases they feel like kind of not cardboard cutouts, but not terribly three-dimensional.
True,
and I think
true.
they are there to kind of facilitate revelations and motivations for the male characters, which obviously sticks in my craw.
Yeah.
When we were watching, I mean, I don't want to rhapsodize on Zendaya as MJ because I'll be here all day. I think her performance is just fucking amazing.
Yeah,
in Homecoming, like I was just thinking, like, her performance is so real. Like I had so many, like when I was at high school and sixth form, I had so many friends who were just like, the smart girl who kind of like sits a little bit away from you, just making kind of cutting observations like that. And I just, I feel so glad that like that kind of character is seen in a film like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think I don't like it when MJ and Gwen are just kind of perceived as rivals for Peter's affection, because there's a fucking gorgeous moment you remember the graphic novel Spider-Man Blue? Yeah. By Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale.
Yeah.
So there's that gorgeous one. So the whole thing's framed as the narrative device is Peter making little voice recordings on a tape recorder
to Gwen, who has passed,
who's passed on by this point. Yeah, and he's now married to MJ, and he's living with MJ. And there's a beautiful moment right at the end when I'm getting tearful just thinking about it. So MJ, in the last issue, MJ sees Peter making these recordings, and she says, "The next time you speak to Gwen, tell her I miss her too." And I just think that's beautiful. Sorry.
That's all right. It's okay. It's all right. No, it's good. It's a really touching moment.
But it's like that little line gives you so much about, they didn't just see each other as
they were friends.
Rivals for Peter's affection. They were friends.
Yeah.
And they had other shit going on other than like, how do they feel about Peter?
And you don't need to be jealous of a friend, like they loved each other in their own way, and they didn't get Peter and MJ didn't really get together until like the late 80s, really.
Yeah.
They were kind of, they dated, they had some dalliances, he almost got engaged, but they didn't really properly get together, I'd say, until like the late 80s.
I'm sure you know this, but did you know that when Sam Raimi proposed to his wife, she used MJ's line from the comics, which is, "Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot."
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
That's something that actually happened.
Oh,
to
that's
Sam
sweet.
Raimi.
That's really sweet.
Because she knew he was a big Spider-Man fan,
Oh, that's really nice. I like that. But yeah, I think that, and I think in this film they do saying all that, and it is presented like, oh, it's not even like MJ's jealous. It's just that she feels what he did, the kiss, as Spider-Man, was quite insensitive, I think.
Yeah, there's the upside down.
Yeah.
He tries to replicate the upside down kiss.
Yeah.
Which, Peter, what the fuck, man? You know she's there.
Yeah. She's watching.
Like, why? I just don't believe that moment. I don't believe that Peter in that
would do
moment,
that.
Even though he's like a bit high on his own farts at this point, I don't believe he'd be like, yeah, just take my mask down and kiss me. In front of all these people.
Yeah, I think that is a bit, oh God, what's the word? Contrived. I think that's it feels that. But I will say I do like when Gwen realizes in the jazz club that she's being played.
Yeah, and she's like, "I'm so sorry."
Yeah, she apologized. She goes, "You know what? I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't realize. I'm not that person." They still they have at least that moment between them where it's not their fault, or their,
and it's little things like that, just little beautiful authentic things like that just make me sort of glom onto the film, and I can look past so much of the shit that gets on my nerves. There's those wonderful moments.
I think Rosemary Harris is wonderful again in all of the films,
consistently amazing. She's British, isn't she?
She is. Yeah, she is. And I think sometimes you can hear it come through her in her accent.
You can, I'm not mad at it.
But I'm not going to complain. And when she in Spider-Man 2, when he tells her, I remember thinking, don't tell her the truth of the origin of Spider-Man and Ben dying. I was like, don't do it. And he does it. And again, she, forgives him. And, there's a hero in all of us. There's that kind of speech in all of the films. And again, much like in Amazing Spider-Man 2 as well, there is that kind of implication where she's like...
It's very sort of like wink, wink.
I know, but I don't know. Spider-Man wouldn't kill Sandman. Why would he do that?
Yeah, it's very coded as if he knows.
Yeah, and, but I quite enjoy the playful aspect of that. And
I like it too. And I think Rosemary Harris has a wonderful little sort of twinkle in her eye. I think she does the knowing playfulness very well. Like when she's in the first one, when she's in hospital and Peter's talking to MJ and she just kind of half opens her eyes and gives herself that little smile. Yeah. Oh, she's just such a fucking great... She's still with us, actually.
She is. Yeah.
Thank God.
She is.
Okay.
I was listening to the commentary and I think Thomas Hayden Church was talking about her and how lovely she was on this press tour. And I think she said something like, "This is the most wonderful night at the press event and stuff." And really appreciated the kind of how wonderful and how kind of amazing everything was, still at that age, taking it in.
Yeah, she's so angelic. I really like Rosemary Harris in these films.
She's great. And she's in The Gift as well, another Sam Raimi film as well. Is
that with Dan Stevens?
No, I think that's...
is that The Guest?
Yeah, you're thinking of The Guest.
Katie Holmes and Keanu Reeves.
Is it? No. So Kate Blanchett. Do you remember? She's Katie Holmes, and I think Greg Kinnear's in it. It's like she's a sidekick, Kate Blanchett. Remember that? Have you seen it? No?
I don't think I have, actually.
No. Simple Plan's good as well. That's a Sam Raimi one.
Okay.
That's a really good one. But yes, they're all great, and they've all, again, each and every one of the characters that returns, I think, do a great job, But I want to talk about the new characters. So let's talk about Thomas Hayden Church's The Sandman.
I mean, you can see that that's where Sam Raimi's heart was really at in that bit, because the whole sort of thematic arc of the film, I feel, is about forgiveness, and letting go of resentment, which I think is why they really wanted to tie up Harry's story in the film, even though it just feels a bit forced and rushed.
Yeah.
I really like Thomas Hayden Church's performance. I think he, despite being so I know he spent a year, I think, in the gym in preparation for this film, and he's about my height, I think, but he's like quite our height. We're about the same height.
Yeah.
But he's very bulky. He's got that beautiful craggy face. He's got he's got
granite chin.
Yeah, granite chin, but he's got the big, beautiful blue expressive eyes. And I just think he manages the sort of menacing aspects of it really well, but he manages the vulnerability really well. You never really feel like this is a bad person.
Yeah.
You just feel like it's someone who has bad luck, and that's something he explicitly says. But you never hate him. You were always like, that's a bad decision, but I can see why you feel you had to make it.
They didn't, in the comic, they didn't have his daughter in the comic, but it has been something they've added in the continuity.
That's interesting.
Because they were like, actually, this kind of works for this character, because at one point he was an Avenger even.
Oh, wow, okay.
You know, so he's not all entirely bad. He's been kind of flipped between, good and bad, and sort of good and sort of bad. But he's never been explicitly like a maniacal villain. He's just like, I need a bit of money. I need a bit of cash.
Yeah.
He was defeated by being sucked into a Hoover in his first appearance.
Excellent.
That's how Spidey beat him.
No notes.
No notes, exactly.
That's just classic.
Why couldn't they do it in the film?
That's so fucking Stanley.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And yeah, but he kind of looked at these. I think Sam Raimi talked about like the Jewish folklore, like the golem.
Yes, absolutely.
They talked about like Frankenstein's monster, and Frankenstein, which we were going to talk about.
Yep.
So yeah, there was those kind of ideas that it's kind of the cursed monster, or the human element coming through this kind of ogre character.
That very much tracks with the performance, isn't it? Because he is kind of hunched. He's like his back's arched, his shoulders are up, and he's kind of like dragging himself along quite a lot. Yeah, no, I think the film would have been much better if they'd just focused on that. Focus on that. Don't try and by all means put Eddie Brock in there and the rivalry. That works. We'll talk about that in a second. But I think just fucking, you don't need to shoot your Venom wad straight away. Just pace yourself.
Yeah.
Slow down. Think of England.
Yeah. I mean, you could have still had the black suit, but just not had Venom in it.
I agree.
I think you could because you could still explore that story. You could go get those ideas across.
Or make Venom a stinger right at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Set up the next one, and then. But I think that's what they were thinking. They were like, we're probably not going to do a 4. I think that was the thing, and that's why they. But then they did move ahead with the 4. They got ready. They were prepping it. They were.
And what's just a very brief tangent. What's quite refreshing actually is I remember watching the special features on the Amazing Spider-Man disc, and they talk quite openly about, well, we were originally going to make a 4th film with Toby, and then that didn't work out, and this is why. Yeah. And I just thought that was quite. Oh, you don't really. The studios don't usually like to wear the dirty laundry on the special features like this, but I'm here for it.
Absolutely.
Sorry, so new characters. So we had Clint Marco. Who else? We've got Gwen Stacy.
Yes.
Is there anything we want to say about her that we haven't already discussed? Like, I think the aesthetics.
I think she's great. I think
if you could just give her knee-high boots and a little skirt and a
she's got the headband on. She got the hair. Hair looks perfect.
Long blonde hair.
Like, she looks like she's stepped out of the comic. I will say that.
She's got the iconic sort of cat eye makeup.
Yeah.
I think she looks fantastic.
I think one thing is that they put a lot of Gwen into MJ in that first film. A lot of the elements of Gwen and some of those kind of aesthetics and ideas. Because in the original comics, MJ is quite like, I'm the party girl. I don't have time for relationships. I don't have time for blokes. I'll see who I want to see. I don't want to go steady or anything.
Sorry,
cat's climbing into my podcast bag. You do that if you want.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Mischievous. She's mischievous. But yeah, I think she's good. But I feel like, again, there could have been a bit more to her, but I think what she does do, what Bryce Dallas Howard does with her, I think is very good.
Yeah.
Because
you never read her as someone who's trying to fuck things up.
No, exactly. She's not, and it could have quite easily been the catty kind of jealous, love triangle. There's a lot of kind of tropey soap opera stuff in this, which I don't like.
Yeah.
But I think they do somewhat avoid the kind of love triangle, or that kind of love triangle anyway. There's another love triangle, but...
And so, like, and MJ does kind of take umbrage to her because, like, they bump into each other at a restaurant, and Gwen's like, oh my God, Peter's so amazing. I love Peter so much.
Yeah, we spend so much time together.
Anyway,
he tutors me, you know.
And she's like, well, like, why didn't you say anything about this girl that you're friends with, you know, like, and that would raise someone's hackles, you know, especially if like they're meant to be like best mates at college, you know.
Yeah, and again, like MJ loses that job, and she doesn't tell him, and she goes to work at the jazz bar, you know, and he's like, everything's going so great, we're having a great time, and you know, the city loves me, I'm getting all this, and everything's going so well, and I get where MJ's coming from. The more I see it, the more I'm like, I kind of understand MJ a bit more. I think the initial like first few times, like especially in Spider-Man 2, I think she was a bit whingy, a bit whiny. But then the more I see it, I'm kind of going, no. I think the more I mature, I'm kind of like, no, I think she does have a point. Like, why is he kind of to and fro in? Or why is he being like this? So I think the more I watch, the more I mature, I think I see where they're kind of coming from.
Yeah, because, I mean, especially in the second film, Peter's kind of all over the place.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think, to be fair, I think how relationships, like romantic relationships are handled generally is way better and more nuanced and better and just
healthier, definitely.
But I think those films are going more for kind of realism, and whereas Sam Raimi's films are all about the melodrama.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. And yeah, we do get a lot of melodrama, but yeah, we get Topher Grace.
Topher Grace,
of 70s Show fame.
And again, like, while I think the whole venomness of this film kind of sticks in my craw a little bit, I think he gives a good performance, and I am happy to see him when he is Venom, and because I think the aesthetic as Venom and the visual effects of Venom and the costume work pretty well. I like that they did practical makeup for a lot of the Venom stuff. I like the fact that when he's got the Venom suit, but the mask mask bit is off. Yeah, you can see it's like
pulling on him,
and it's like it's stretching him and it's twisting him into something that isn't him, you know, and I just think that's a beautiful little flourish. But again, the more I think about it, you know, and I think this is informed quite a lot by the fact that I just don't enjoy the Tom Hardy Venom films. I just don't think I rate Venom that much as a character. I just don't think he there's a lot that's going on with him outside of a really fucking cool visual.
Yeah, I think initially when he was kind of a creepy stalker weirdo, it kind of initially worked, but then they started being like, oh yeah, but he's got this warped code of justice and honor, and you know, he only really hates Spider-Man and would hurt Spider-Man and his family. But then they kind of segue him, like, he's so popular now, we have to make him an anti-hero, we have to put him in his own book. So it's kind of,
just like they did with every female Batman villain. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, true.
I think Harley Quinn's in the Justice League now. I think Poison Ivy's like as a kind of anti-hero now.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like a Warner Brothers executive. I just think there's no such thing as too much Batman discourse.
Yeah, true. No, well, we've done more Batman on here.
We're
than
not here
Spider-Man.
to talk about Batman.
No, not this one time. But yeah, why don't we talk about Thomas Hayden Church was a big fan of Topher Grace's turn as Venom as well, because he didn't spend a lot of time with him, but the time he did spend, he was like, I love this performance and how quickly and how like you can see that insecurity within Topher, that you can see the kind of like animalistic. I think they based a lot of Venom's movements on like jaguars, like cats, big cats and stuff, which I think is, and you see that kind of lunge after the church. And again, like it's not that the Venom stuff in there is bad.
No,
not necessarily.
It's just there's so much going on. I don't have the mental bandwidth to focus on this as much as it perhaps deserves.
I feel unfortunately, like you've got the Harry, who's kind of a dark mirror, and then you've got Venom, who's kind of a dark mirror as well. Yeah. And I think that's two, and we'll get a little bit of that in Amazing Spider-Man 2 as well. And I think maybe that those don't quite gel. And there's a lot of, as much as I like this film, there are a lot of kind of issues, and it's rushed, and there's kind of certain scenes don't work for me. But I think the acting in it, I think the acting and the actors, I think that are all on top of their game doing what they do best.
Yep.
And I think it's not their problem. The problems in the film are not theirs to worry about, because they are doing what is required of them to the best of their talent. It's just all the other behind the scenes fuckery.
Yeah, I think everyone in front of and behind the camera in this film, except perhaps the stunt guys who were a bit rude to Kirsten Dunst. I think everyone had the best intentions.
Yeah, I can't say if that was on this film or if it was on a previous Spider-Man entry.
Okay.
But still, the point remains.
Still not good enough, is it?
Yeah, and I think it adds to her problems with it. But yeah, so we talked about a lot of stuff that we do like. I think Sam Raimi's filmmaking is great. I think, the humor is there. The humor works. It's quite broad humor, but I think it still kind of works in a lot of ways. What is the stuff that you don't like? Let's be a little bit negative now and critical of the film.
Pacing wise, it's kind of again it feels both rushed and overlong. You're gonna be doing something wrong.
Yeah,
I feel that there's just too much going on, and I don't have enough to emotionally connect with. There's not a clear emotional through line, and especially if you've got the whole emotional arc of it should be old wounds have been opened up because Peter has found out he's found out he's not got the closure he thought he had regarding Uncle Ben's death. It should be about kind of reckoning with your own anger and your own kind of need for retribution and choosing forgiveness. It should be about acknowledging the darker side of yourself and choosing the better version of yourself, because I think that is generally the most sort of emotionally resonant stuff. And I think the black suit would have been a great opportunity to do that visually and thematically. But I think the fact that they felt the need to, okay, well, if we're having the black suit, we've got to have Venom. Yeah. We've got to have Eddie brock, and I think by all means Eddie Brock. But there's just too much going on, and having to kind of reckon with the Harry stuff as well. Yeah. It's just overstuffed, and like you say, £10 of shit in a £5 bag. Not that I think it's shit necessarily.
No, I don't think it's...
I know you hated the whole amnesia thing.
I do. I really do.
Very soap opera-y. I feel like Harry's kind of all over the place in this film, because he's I think James Franco plays the kind of the nice aspects of Harry very well. But when he's, because we've had that disconnect from the second film, when he's in sort of evil mode, if you will, I just don't think it works.
No.
It just seems to come out of nowhere a little bit. If they'd made it so that it's it's the performance enhancer, it works with you. Yeah, that would have been much better. If they
we said before, what if he had a split personality, or if it was we were seeing. So in the commentary, they said the reason they did that, and I kind of get where they're going, was to remind us of their friendship and how deep their friendship was and how powerful their friendship was and their connection. And you don't quite get that in the previous films as much, but you kind of need it to get to that finale and that sacrifice and that team up.
Yeah.
So I kind of get why they're doing it. I just think they've gone about it in the worst possible way.
I think there were better devices you could use to do that. I think flashbacks.
Exactly.
Have Peter be in his room, trying to find something, and he stumbles on something that Harry gave him in high school. A
good example is Winter Soldier.
Yeah,
they do a flashback with Bucky and Cap in the 30s and 40s. Didn't have that necessarily so much in the first film, but we needed that so we could get to that big scene where he's finish your mission, all that stuff, and that which works so well. But that little fleck of that. And that was enough.
2 minutes?
Not even that. Probably not even that.
It's a short scene, but it does a lot of heavy lifting in terms of that relationship. Yeah. And I think you could have... I just think I can see what they were trying to do. I think there were better ways to do it.
I agree. I think tonally, there's a lot of kind of tonal whiplash, because we go from, a hilarious jazz dance scene, 70s, like you said, jazz, dig on this, breaths, and he's swinging, and he's, and that moment where there's a lovely moment in the commentary where Bryce Dallas Howard says the bit where Peter takes off his jacket and the wind rushes into Gwen's face. That was very old school Sam Raimi, because she's like, we're on this $1 billion movie, like $1 million movie, and Sam gets a bit of cardboard and just whafts it in my face.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, if it worked.
Yeah.
But that's showing
his low budget roots.
Exactly. Plank camera on a plank, and doing all that stuff, which I love, and I thought that was a really nice moment. But you go from that, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, domestic abuse.
Yeah. And I think there are ways you can do that where it's like it shakes you out of the kind of melodrama.
Yes.
And it's like, no, we're actually talking about something that happens and is serious, and we should think about like domestic violence.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's so much going on. You want me to think about a serious issue now? Okay, right, shit. Okay, that's not good. And then it's like, okay, but I'm taking this suit off now, and so now as soon as this suit's off me, everything's fine. And there's just, I mean, it's clear this whole experience clearly leaves a scar in Peter's relationship with MJ, and unfortunately, we'll never see like what happened to them after this.
But I'm glad we get that bittersweet ending that we talk about. It's not just like, oh, all is forgiven.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely spot on.
Yeah, I think it was very clever not to just go, oh, it's fine, all the things we've been through. Oh, you're in the black suit. I think the black suit is an easy get out. Clause for Peter. Just go, oh, it wasn't me, but it was you.
It was, yeah. Because we see, before that happens, we see like a little bit of hubris start to emerge in him,
Exactly. And I love the bit where he's rubbing his chest, because that's the symbiote has a grip on him. Like, and that's usually where, he's like feeling his anger, or his insecurities are coming out, and he's like, and then he realizes, and again, he tries taking it off, he apologizes, he doesn't use it, but then when Sandman comes into the scenario, that's when he wears it again, because he knows, and it becomes like an addiction. And that's when we get to Eddie Brock, it's like, no, I want this, I need this. This is the, we've seen Homecoming, where he's like, if I don't have the suit, I'm nothing without the suit. So that's how Eddie feels.
And I think it's a good visual representation of, and we've all been there. When someone wrongs us and we feel slighted by them, and we feel like we have a really deep, legitimate grievance, there is a part of your brain that says, no, I want to be a cunt to this person.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got to make a real conscious effort to shut that down. Otherwise, it turns you into someone you don't want to be. And again, like, that's powerful. Dramatically speaking, that's powerful. That works. But again, like, there's so much going on. There's so much background noise. I can't hear that. I can't connect with that emotional through line.
And I think going back to the kind of amnesia stuff, again, you say it makes them look like they've got a bit of kind of, chemistry and stuff. And I know a lot of people, like, that's my real bugaboo with the film, is that those sequences. Again, they work on that level. If they're in a different film, if they're in a rom-com.
Do you mean where like Harry and MJ are
making omelettes and twists and
and
all
dancing?
That. Yeah.
See, I love that. I genuinely love that. That's weird. It's weird that I love that and you don't.
Yeah. But I'm okay. So the most controversial moment, arguably, in the film, the dance sequence, I don't mind that.
No,
so
me
much.
Neither. I like
so for me,
it's stupid.
It's stupid. It's
cheesy,
silly. It's bizarre, but it is funny. But it fits for me for this character, because he's not the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, where he is, he's a smart, attractive, good-looking guy, even though he struggles with everything. This guy is a nerd. He's a loser. He is awkward. He is he's so hard done by, and he's so like even the best situations he's in, the most positive situations, he's still a bit like befuddled or very
Sam Raimi's quite awkward and nervous.
There's a very neurodivergent energy to it, like which is great, and I love it. But I don't think, like, a lot of people are like, where's the darkness? Where's the real kind of evil? Like, this is a thing that bothers me as well. In those original Alien costume comics, we didn't know we were going to get Venom.
No, of course not.
So all it was a suit that kind of did a few extra things, could turn into other clothes, could produce its own webbing. They didn't know they were going there at that point. But eventually they did. Now, the animated series introduced the kind of negative aspects and the violence and the it kind of brings out those negative emotions and enhances them and makes him stronger and faster and all this. And again, comes out of space, they ignore a whole Secret Wars kind of element of it. Yeah. And that's what they use in this a lot of that kind of idea. And I think as good as Tobey Maguire is, I don't think I would buy a really dark Tobey Maguire performance.
If you want dark,
yeah,
Tobey Maguire just isn't the guy.
No.
I mean, like the reason they cast him is because he just does earnestness so well.
Exactly.
Again, he's got those big, beautiful, blue, expressive eyes.
Yeah.
He's got that kind of cherubic
Hopeful,
face,
charming.
He's got that kind of like ever so slightly cracked kind of voice.
Yeah,
and he's
very
just,
boyish charm.
He's very boyish. He's so lovable.
Yeah, and again, he's supposed to be a teenager in the first one, so you have to kind of
was he like 26, 27?
Yeah, I think so.
I think Andrew Garfield was like 30 in the second one.
I think so.
But, you know,
but I appreciate that. I appreciate people's problem with it, but now, like with Batman Begins, I think when he has the voice, when he uses the Batman voice, it's fine because it's in short bursts. But when you get to like the Dark Knight, he's speaking in like monologues and long sentences. You're like, fucking hell, okay. I'm not sure if this is working anymore.
And this is when I realized I should probably say less in this voice.
Probably ruined
because
his
it doesn't work well.
And that's my thing. I think the brief moments where he is, because let's think about it. Even one of the darkest fights in the film, arguably, is when he's fighting Harry, and it ends. And they're in their civilian garb.
Yeah.
But also, like, that's where the meme comes from. Because he can't do the kind of earnestly evil, maniacal, bad, violent, dark things. He's like, "Ooh, I'm evil." Ooh, There's
that moment's really fun. Though.
Oh, Goblin Jr. Ooh,
gonna cry.
But that's where you don't get that meme. But you get that meme because he's they're having fun with it, they're playing with it, and there's humor to it. But it's not like, and even the Venom films, like, people forget as well, those early Venom comics, as dark as they are full of wacky, cartoony stuff, Venom swinging and singing "Strangers in the Night." It's like, so when Venom came out, I get people didn't like it or take to it, but it is quite it's a snapshot of that time, of those comics that came out at that time. So I get why people don't like it, because again, they were like, it's goofy on the darkness, but it wasn't those comics. That film is a representation of those comics at that time.
And as well, I think 2007, you're getting, so Batman Begins is out, running The Dark Knight, and I think
Iron Man 2008.
Iron Man's on the way, and I think the general consensus is, we want more dark and grounded superhero stories. So I don't know how much of that was studio notes saying, could you guys just make it a little bit darker? And for all the fact that he made, a trilogy of films about fucking demon zombies.
True.
And a woman getting raped by a tree. That I think Sam Raimi does have quite a joyful sensibility as a filmmaker. So I think...
And one of his big inspirations was the original Superman film. And you can see that in the DNA of this.
Oh yeah,
you can see the earnestness, the hopefulness, the oh shucks,
gee willikers.
There is that element to it, and it's cheesy and fun. But when it comes to that dance sequence, I think it fits the character, because it's like somebody who thinks they're cool or thinks that a certain thing is cool, and they go, "All right, black suit and dancing is my version of cool, or that version."
Do you know what it's like?
Cool.
It's like you work Christmas do, and the guy who doesn't get out much has a few too many.
Yes,
it's that exact fucking energy.
Yeah, and it's all.
And I'm not. Don't get me wrong.
Are you that guy?
I'm not, but I like that guy. I'll buy him a drink.
Sure.
I won't enable him.
No.
But I think I do quite like the idea of someone who's a bit nerdy and weird, like letting their freak flag fly a little bit.
Because this is as dark, or is he like him being overly confident and brash and rude and dismissive, and is his evil version. This character, this is as evil as he goes. This is as bad as he goes, because he's so good on the opposite.
And he's rude to the his landlord.
And apologizes. Mr. Ditkovich.
Mr. Ditkovich. Ursula. That's
that's it. Yeah, that's it.
She's bringing in milk and cookies while he's on the phone to Dr. Connors, and he's like, "You've got any nuts? Go make me some cookies with nuts."
Exactly.
Like, dude.
Yeah. And again, like, that is still the darkest he can be while still being that character and that version of the character.
No, I get you.
So that's why it kind of doesn't bother me. I think it's a humorous sequence, and again, it's played for laughs. It's not like, this is taken dreadfully seriously. It's a goofy sequence. It's a funny, goofy sequence. So that's my feelings on that particular scene. But yeah, was there anything else you wanted to mention about Spider-Man 3 before we finish? Or?
What else? But there was just a little like. Do you know what? There were lots of things where I thought I liked that. I would have liked more of it, but I can't have more of it because there's too much shit going on
already. Yeah,
like,
so you forgive
again,
it.
Like you know how you were saying like about how Venom moved, like. All the time Venom was on screen, I was like, do you know what? For all the fact that I think Venom's quite limited as a character, like all the Venom stuff in terms of the performance, the production design, the visual effects. I even like how Spider-Man like configures his hand to shoot webs, whereas Venom like points his fist down and shoots them out of his wrist like that. They did that, and I was just like, that's just like a little thing that just shows me that they care about the little details.
Yeah, exactly. So they have to do that. You have to have it.
And that was just something I noticed. Yeah, but again, like I just think I don't think there are very many elements in the film that I didn't like really on balance. It's just the fact that it's like do you know what? I'll tell you exactly what it's like. It's like if you said, do you want a tiramisu? I'd be like, fuck yeah, I want a tiramisu. Do you want a beef stew? Fuck yeah, I want a beef stew. Do you want a cheeseburger? Fuck yeah, I want a cheeseburger. Okay, I'm just gonna get you a big bowl and I'm gonna put all three of those things together. I'm gonna mix it up for you. I was like, don't want that.
Yeah. It's disgusting now. Why is it disgusting?
Like I mean, all the individual elements are good.
Yeah.
But like if you put them together, it's just a bit too much, mate.
It's not ideal. Again, I think them teaming up at the end was nice because it was kind of like a Marvel team up without being a Marvel team up before they could mix the universes.
For sure, yeah.
I quite enjoyed that. I like it really got the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my God, yeah. And I had a load of friends come and they thought I was a geek and a nerd, but I brought them to Spider-Man 3 and they were like, actually, I quite enjoyed that, Dan.
Good.
They all came out kind of, and even I was like, I come out of the cinema sometimes, I'll in the moment, I'll be like, oh, that was great. And then I'll sit down and I'll think about it and consider it. I did like the teaming up. I think the teaming up of Sandman and Venom is, again, very rushed and made more sense in the video game because Venom takes his daughter hostage.
I remember that, I remember playing the video game and there was that cutscene and I was like, that makes so much more sense. And I wondered if it was a deleted scene from the film.
I think the Teresa Russell who plays the mum and the daughter was supposed to return, and I think Captain Stacy had a few more scenes. Right. The farmer from Babe, of course, James Cromwell.
James Cromwell, yeah.
Good old man.
Very, very outspoken vegan advocate.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Right, well, maybe because of Babe.
What? I don't know if he's still with us actually now.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
I think he passed recently. I could be wrong though. Okay, it could be one of those people who's like, "Wait, I thought they died," and then you find out that they. It just
went. That'll do. Just kidding. R.I.P. But it's a tricky one, this film, but I don't despise it. I know Mike and Megan did she had a huge rant. I'll include it in the show notes on the film. She doesn't remember her huge rant, but it was a huge and very entertaining rant. But yeah, I can't bring myself to hate it. I can't bring myself to dislike it because there's so many elements that I do love about it, and again that kind of remind me of the previous entries and things like that.
I know what you mean. Like I have seen this film, I think, maybe a dozen times since it came out in 2007. Yeah. I own it on disc. Yeah. I will watch it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
100%.
One thing that just came to me while you were talking about the Harry's return and the Goblin team-up thing, do you know what I think would have been really, would have made just that so much more impactful?
Go on.
If they'd abandoned the whole fucking, he's got to be in a cool black suit now because everyone has to be in a cool black suit. If they'd made him actually put on the Goblin suit and the mask, right at the end, he suits up, He catches sight of himself. He's wearing the helmet. Yeah. He takes off the helmet and he smashes it. And it's like, right, okay, so he's choosing to be different.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I also think we could have had the schizophrenic thing. We could have had flashbacks. I also think if he was pretending to have amnesia, and then while he's pretending, he actually starts to remember why they were friends in the first place and why why they cared for each other, why they had these strong bonds. And then at the end, when he does, when he has the option to do it, because he does the thing again. It's the contrived thing where he's like, he's got to make Mary Jane break up with him instead of just being in a relationship.
That's the whole thing, isn't it?
And I was like,
he's got to weaponize his relationship.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't need this. Like, she could have just broken up with him, and that would have been fine for me. Or she could have taken a hostage or something. That probably would have worked a bit better. But again, she didn't want to do that in the film. So yeah.
It's like someone's just added a few chopped onions into the cheeseburger, tiramisu, beef stew
Omelette.
combo. Put an omelette in there.
Yes, we'll move on now to The Amazing Spider-Man 2. All right, so the plot for this one, I'll do this time.
Thank you, because I don't know if I have the energy to do that again.
So
that was like I every time it was like walking through a forest, and every time you think you
went, wait, no, there's that.
Every time
and
you think
this.
you've uncovered something, you find something more.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Amazing Spider-Man 2. So we open with a flashback, and it's Peter Parker's parents trying to escape Norman Osborn and his plotting and of the spiders, and we find out later on what that's all about. Peter opens up with this wonderful swinging sequence, which introduces Alexei Sistevich, who becomes the Rhino by the end of the film. One of my favorite swinging Spider-Man sequences ever, I think. Just captures the character and the essence of that Spider-Man idea. Gwen and Peter are graduating because they look almost in their 30s, so they must graduate.
Yeah.
They must get them out of high school as quickly as possible. So
I think they were literally in their early 30s.
I think so. I think so. So they're out. But Peter remembers the promise that he made Captain Stacy in the previous film about trying to stay away from Gwen so she doesn't get into danger. And they're broken up several times, to and fro. And Gwen says, I break up with you now.
Yeah.
And then months pass. He continues doing his Spider-Man thing. He sometimes follows her, weirdly, to make sure she's safe and to keep some form of connection with her. And we are introduced in that opening sequence to a lab technician from Oscorp, who is Max Dillon. He is a nobody, as he describes himself, and he meets Spider-Man, is saved by Spider-Man, and feels like he is meant for something more. He's finally being seen for who he is. And he undergoes again, another vague sciencey accident.
Yeah.
We'll say.
Very poorly regulated science gone wrong.
In Oscorp, and we are also introduced to Harry Osborn and Norman Osborn as well. So Norman Osborn is dying of retroviral hyperplasia,
which turns you green
and gives you
scaly
long fingernails and teeth. And
I didn't know if that was like a symptom or if that was just like a Howard Hughes thing where it was just like going along. But then Harry gets the
he gets the twitch. It's a hereditary disease he's got. So we do see that in the transformation as well. And, he returns to New York after being gone for some time. And then Norman Osborn passes away, which reunites Peter and Harry. So Peter's trying to navigate all this. He wants to know a bit more about his parents. Aunt May is trying to kind of make ends meet as well. And they all of these kind of storylines kind of intersect. Gwen is going to be going off to Oxford, and he's distraught about this, Spider-Man, and doesn't know quite what to do, and finds out that his parents were spies, basically, kind of, or what was it, saboteurs, kind of
whistleblowery kind of
thing. Kind of thing, because Norman Osborn was making some shady deals with some international terrorists or something, and then he blames it on them and tries to set them up, and that leads to the plane sequence and them dying supposedly. And Max has his accident, becomes Electro, and becomes a villain. There's a wonderful kind of Times Square sequence of that. And Harry is dying, and he now runs Oscorp because his dad's died, and he's trying to find a way to cure himself so he doesn't turn into his dad in many ways. But unfortunately, I think he is becoming more and more like his dad as time runs on. And all of these kind of elements kind of come together at the end, as well as maybe the previous film we talked about, I'm not quite sure, to kind of come, and we are into a huge battle with not only Electro, who's taken over this power plant he's designed, but his plans were stolen from him and used. And during the battle, Electro is defeated with the help of not only Gwen, but Spider-Man as well. And then we see Harry has turned into the Green Goblin because he's found this spider toxin, which causes people to self-heat.
He's turned into the Green Goblin for reasons.
Yeah, reasons.
Like there's a subplot in there where he's like, Peter, can you
give
you
me
take
your
photos
blood.
of Spider-Man. Can
Yeah.
you give me Spider-Man's blood? And so he visits Harry
Yeah.
as Spider-Man and says, look, I can't give you my blood because if I do, something worse will happen.
Potentially, yeah.
Because obviously this is a universe in which we've just had someone turn into a giant rampaging lizard monster.
Yeah.
And which is best avoided.
Yeah,
generally.
and that's why the Colm Feore, I think, is really good in this. But he plays Donald Menken, who in the comics is kind of the subordinate to Norman Osborn, and he's very, very good. He's Laufey, King Laufey in Thor.
Oh yes,
Yeah, he's really, really good. I think he would have made a good Vulture, actually. I thought he's got the face for it. And yeah, so the spider hybrid they created was a means to self-heal, because spiders can self-heal, and that kind of links to the Kurt Connors and the mystery there, because it was quite vague in the first one, that kind of hybrid, kind of human animal hybrid kind of study, and then Harry finds out that they destroyed the spiders, but they do have some venom in Special Projects, which is supervillain Origin Central.
Yeah, it's like okay, so this is where we keep all the comic book
Yeah,
suits and
pretty
gadgets.
much. Yeah, so we have that, and then at the end we get the classic. They give them credit for this. They do follow through on the death of Gwen Stacy turning point. And then we have this kind of lovely little kind of epilogue at the end, which is about Peter getting past his trauma and moving on, being Spider-Man again, and he confronts the Rhino just in the last sequence.
So there's just a little beautiful thing where. So earlier in the film, Peter Parker notices a little boy's being bullied.
Yes, yeah,
and they sort of like
I
try
think his
and
name's
sabotage
Jorge. I think.
Jorge, yeah. They try and sabotage his science fair projects that he made, his little wind turbine thing, and Spider-Man sort of like, he obviously doesn't beat up the children, he just like stands there and they run away.
Yeah.
But then he's like, okay, I'm going to walk you home, and that's just a gorgeous little, and that's so Spider-Man.
Yeah,
that little
exactly.
moment.
Very friendly neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. And then so later when Spider-Man's not been around for a year because he's grieving, I think it's a year.
Yeah.
And little Jorge is there in his Spider-Man suit, and he stands up to Rhino, and then you get the big entrance of real Spider-Man. He's just like, "You're just the bravest kid I've ever met. You look after your mum.
Yeah.
I'm going to handle this clown." And that was just chef's kiss.
Wonderful.
Can I just very quickly high level thoughts,
Please?
So when we were arranging to watch this one, I was thinking like, okay, well, I know this is the least good one, like out of all of them. Like this is widely regarded as the least good one.
Sure.
But I remember there being a lot I like about it, so I'm really looking forward to re-engaging with it. Watching this with you, and it was last Saturday, I just had the best fucking time.
Yeah.
I just remember like just being, shit, there's just so much depth to this. Like the things that work about it so much better than I remember. Like I remember liking them, but the things I liked, I love now. And it just totally drowns out all the things that get on my nerves about it. And it really, like, just the chemistry between, I mean, I know this is widely regarded as the best thing about those films, but the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone is just incredible. They're so adorable together. I buy the sort of the bittersweetness of their relationship. I don't doubt for a second that they're crazy about each other, which I never quite believed with Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst, as great as I think they both are individually. I actually liked Dane DeHaan as Harry Osborn. I think there was a lot going on there that just got rushed and just needed so much more room to breathe. Jamie Foxx is just a charisma powerhouse. And his Electro, I think, is really menacing. I love how they incorporate sort of his internal monologue into the score.
Yeah, I love that.
I don't know how diegetic it is because, like, he's in Times Square, pardon me, and he's hijacking all the little the little screens and stuff.
Well,
I don't
he's
know
connected to them.
Yeah, I don't know if it's something he's actually physically playing through, like, speakers. I love all that.
I think he probably doesn't even know he's doing it because he's still learning his powers.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's just kind of pouring out of him as it happens.
And there's kind of like a reluctance. He's kind of like a reluctant villain. and he is someone who's just rejected by society. And I quite like how, like, when he gets power, his first instinct isn't to like, oh, I'm going to turn this on the people who wronged me. He's lost and confused, and just everything wrong happens.
Yeah.
And
It's a series of kind of unfortunate events.
Yeah.
that kind of
And would you believe it that unfortunate events are exacerbated by people having access to firearms? So when people start shooting at him, that's when it gets a bit real.
Yeah.
I love how earnestly Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man doesn't want to hurt Max. He just wants to save him and help him. I love Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man. I really do. Like I get the criticisms that like he's too cool and too hot to be Peter Parker, but I do think we all know like hot bumbling dudes who don't know they're hot. You know, we all know people who are, and I just love it. He's such a geek. Yeah, but he's so charming, and
he's a very different form of geek. I'd say he's more kind of like, I don't know. It's a different kind of Peter Parker, and I think that is the point. He is charming, he's romantic, but also he's still not sure of himself. He's full of doubt. But he's not quite as like like kind of
he's kind
a
of
doofus.
He's
kind of
not manic's not quite the right word, but he's very sort of like his Peter feels very improv-y.
Yeah,
like his lines always feel improvised.
I think a lot of them were. In fact, there were a lot of instances of that.
He's quite a chaotic Peter Parker.
Yes,
and I kind of love that about him.
Yeah, messy, very messy.
I love how when you go Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, Tom Holland, they all bring just such wonderful personality and idiosyncrasies to the role, but it's all recognizably still the same character. Agreed. And I really like that.
Yeah,
it's like, you know, if it's like The Flash, like Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck are both recognizably Batman, but they're very, very different.
Absolutely.
But while being exactly the same.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I get it. I absolutely get it. Yeah. And I agree. Like that whole kind of talking, like Kevin Feige was a big fan of Elektra, like the idea of Elektra, like the power, liked how I really like how they use his power set as well. Like I like that moment where he's trying to follow him to the hydroelectric plant, and it's almost like playing the video game because you're following that trail of electricity, and his face is in the in the building, and it's kind of again very cartoony and kind of wacky, but it still feels quite real. And I
think the electro fights between
visuals.
Visually and choreography wise and visual effects wise, stunning. Absolutely incredible. I love that moment where Max is just like letting his electricity beams go everywhere and everything slows down, and you see Spider-Man, like we go into like spider sense vision mode, and we see someone's about to put their hand on the steps and on the guardrail, just it's about to become electrified. So you just see him like plan out the geometry of where he's got a web and when, and then we just see boom, everything snaps into place.
And he's got a broken web shooter, so
he's got a broken web shooter, so he has to and I love how sort of he talks with Gwen, and she's like, "Oh, remember this science? Like, have you tried magnetizing your webs?" He's like, "I did not try magnetizing my webs.
I tried all this.
And I just love like how she's smart, you know, and she's like Peter's smart. She's smarter, you know,
and she knows how to shut. She's like, I'm the only one who knows how to shut down this grid. You can't do it.
Yeah,
you know, I've got it. And again, she's got something to do, something to add, and again, there's. Again, that improvement that we see in the female characters is definitely here. I think she's wonderful.
I think Emma Stone as Gwen Stacy is genuinely one of the best sort of like comic book movie characters.
Yes, 100%.
Because she's smart and she's capable and she has agency, and it never feels like a studio executive saying, people like more empowered female characters now. Can we make her a bit more #girl boss?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's mandated.
And she, like, again, the chemistry between them's off the charts.
Yeah.
The conflicted, like, should we or shouldn't we be together-ness of it is off the charts.
I love that moment where they're like, oh, well, we're going to have to set some ground rules. And they're all being, like, wonderfully, like, oh, you can't laugh like that. And she's
they're
like,
so playful.
So wonderful.
Yeah.
Like, if there's any, like, again, I could genuinely watch a romantic comedy with just these two.
That's something like, generally, I don't like romantic comedies, and I don't like love scenes,
Yeah,
love
same,
subplots.
same.
And it's not because I'm a bitter and twisted husk of a person, although I am. It's because they so rarely feel authentic. Like,
Yeah.
they're so rarely pop.
You don't buy it.
Like I think the great ones, you just want to spend time with these characters. You just want to hang out with them.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like they just have such magnetism, and I'm just it just makes me sad that. And I hope they're both happy and fulfilled wherever they are. But I know that I think they were together when they were making these films.
They were, yeah.
For both of them.
But yeah, there's been
I'm
some.
sorry it didn't work out.
Yeah,
them,
there's been some interviews, but they're still very supportive, and they talk about each other, and they're open about it, and yeah, I don't think there's any bad blood between them. He's very supportive. I think when Poor Things came out, he was talking about it a lot, and she's like, "Oh, it's wonderful. Go see her. She's great."
Of course,
because he's great.
That's so
so Andrew
that warms my
Garfield.
cockles. Yeah, they're so lovable.
And she was asked if she was going to be in Spider-Man. She called him about being in Spider-Man No Way Home, and she's like, "Are you in it?" And he's like, "No, never, no, never."
Yeah.
He even lied to her about it. And yeah, and he had a hard time with these films. Again, there's a lot of mandates and things that they had to have in and force in,
because it felt like they were trying to. I remember when they were ramping up production of the first Amazing Spider-Man, which I adore. It's one of my favorite Spider-Man films. It's very much Spider-Man Begins.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got that kind of like dark, kind of grounded Nolan grittiness going on. But at the same time, it also felt very much like, well, we need to get the Twilight fans on board, So let's really push
the hair is very
let's
very
push
Robert
the
Pattinson.
love aspect of it like to the forefront. But I think in doing that, they gave us just a really iconic comic book movie couple.
And Marc Webb directed 500 Days of Summer as well.
With Zooey Deschanel and
exactly.
Gordon-Levitt.
Which, again, that lead character is maybe not as... I think some people can misread that film a little bit. I think, that he's the nicest guy or...
Right. I'll be honest, I don't think I've seen it.
Okay. So Joseph Gordon-Levitt came out and he was like, I think people romanticize that film when that character's actually not that great a guy. But that again, the chemistry works in that. So I think that's what he brought to this. Because again, the relationships and the
Is the conceit
romance.
Like she has memory loss, so they have their first date over?
No. You're thinking 50 First Dates. You're thinking with Adam Sandler.
Right.
Yeah, which is similarly titled, but yeah, no, it's not quite that. But watch it, see what you think. But I think it's a good film, but it's that character's not necessarily that nice a guy if you watch it with the right framing. I think in modern eyes you'd see it more so than now. Anyway, I think he does. He brings that to the table, and I think the film is better for it. Yeah, because it doesn't feel quite as contrived or sappy or saccharine. It's not that kind of old school kind of romance. It kind of feels more modern and more real in a lot of ways. And I think that's one of the aspects of the films I could watch over and over and over and over and over and over is just any of those scenes. And again, they feel improvised, they feel fun, they feel lively, and they light up the screen together.
And I think the Peter and Harry stuff as well. I feel work because it starts off and Harry is. He has obviously difficult relationship with his father. He's trying to run the company and he's trying to be serious, and he's 20 years old and he just has no framework of how to deal with all this. No. And then Peter comes back into his life and he tries to be kind of dismissive, and then he just calls back to like an insult he gave him like when they were kids. Yeah. And Peter's like, oh, there he is. Yeah. And he just cracks that little smile.
Because again, we didn't know about him in the first film. He wasn't around. He was not mentioned.
And I love in the first film, by the way, how it's like our founder Norman Osborn shown here in shadows because we haven't cast the actor yet. Fair enough. You do.
Okay, sure. But they keep that up. They've got the lady talking about the hydroelectric plant, so they've got the hologram thing. So they keep that idea and that aspect of it. So and I think he's good. Again, this kind of plays into that original kind of Night of Gwen Stacy kind of storyline, the night she died. because he's dealing with like LSD and he's ill. Because of that, he's having a breakdown. He learns his dad is the Green Goblin. He sees him die. Blah blah blah. So there's a lot of kind of similarities there, and they're playing with that. And again, they're both. And Peter goes up to him and says, "I know exactly what you're going through."
Yeah.
Which again kind of connects them, and he's like, "Well, maybe not exactly, but yeah." There was some very odd like choices that didn't make the film, like Peter Parker being under like surveillance and things.
Okay.
Again, there was a lot of ideas like being thrown at this. There was a post-credit scene that had nothing to do with Spider-Man. There was a post-credit scene, which was a scene from Days of Futures Past. The reason for this was that Marc Webb was contracted to do a film with 20th Century Fox.
Right.
But dropped out of that because he wasn't sure if he was going to do this. And because of the problem, they said, do you mind promoting our X-Men movie in your movie?
Okay.
So they made like a deal because the real post-credit scene was going to be the gentleman, Gustav Fiers, the mysterious bloke from the first one and this one.
Guy in the hat.
Yeah,
Hat guy.
The character's from like a series of Spider-Man novels, like a terrorist or something. And he was apparently going to go to the special projects area where all the villain origin room.
Villain origin factory.
Yeah, and he was going to knock on a glass case. And he was going to say, "Wake up, old friend," and it was going to be Norman Osborn's head.
Okay, wouldn't be mad at it, but wowzers.
Yeah, interesting. Another deleted scene is that the one that instead of that wonderful box scene with Aunt May, and that kind of metaphor, analogy, whatever you want to call it, that idea of putting your grief and trauma.
Oh, where she's putting all Ben's stuff in that box.
And he's like, "Oh, you're throwing it away." And she's, "No, I'm finding a better place to put it. I can't throw it away."
That
it's
is
part
gorgeous.
Wonderful.
Can we throw some love to Sally Field as Aunt May, because I think she's just such an incredible actor. There was a TV miniseries she did in the 70s called Sybil, that was based on real events, where she played a character with multiple personalities. Obviously, like even stuff like Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah, of course.
Mrs. Doubtfire, that character could so easily come across as as antagonistic, let's say. But I think she beautifully sells the fact that she is a single mum who is absolutely doing her best and like trying to manage like a really high pressure career with 3 kids, and her ex is just a fucking clown who just like is amazing at the loving and nurturing and fun stuff, but no discipline, just does not have his shit together. And that must be infuriating when you've got so much going on and it feels like your best is never good enough. I work so hard and these kids, every time they look at their dad, they're like, "Yay!" But I have to be the ogre because I'm the one making sure shit gets sorted out. I'm going off on a Sally Field tangent.
That's all right. But it's good. It's good because like I think her scenes are very much necessary and needed, and I'm glad that there are so many of them. I like the chimney scene where she comes in and it's like, "Oh, don't come in, I'm naked."
And I love how when he's getting changed in that scene, they filmed it by rotating the room he's in. So it's like he's sliding and falling up the wall. That was really
wonderful. And I love that. I love the sequence where she breaks down because she's like, "I'm your mum. I don't care about your dad. I don't care what he did. He abandoned you. We don't know where he's gone. He could be dead. Don't know where he left. I'm your mum. I don't give a shit. You're my kid." And he says to her, "It's not about that. I love you and you are enough, but it's not about that." And it's a wonderful little sequence. And then she reveals the kind of spy espionage stuff in the comics. They were originally like double agents during the war, and the Red Skull ended up killing them, or a version of the Red Skull. I think as time has marched on, they've changed it. So initially it was the 40s Red Skull, then it was the communist Red Skull, then they've changed it to something else. Then they were SHIELD agents. So what do you think about that aspect of the park? Does it take away from Spider-Man being the kind of average guy when his parents are kind of super scientists or spies?
It's a tricky one because like that whole subplot, I can see why it would lift right out of the films. And I think they wouldn't necessarily be any poorer for it. I quite like them. I quite like those little. So we get those little sort of prologues in both, don't we? So
so you basically see the other side of the prologue because it's from Peter's perspective in the first one, and that's from Richard Parker and Mary Parker's perspective in the following one.
I I actually quite like them as little self-contained kind of spy things.
Yeah.
I think I don't really feel, to be honest, I don't really feel any particular way about them.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're there because I think they act as a nice point of differentiation between this version of Spider-Man and the previous version, where it's not really they don't really think about Peter's birth parents very much. It's just
True.
You know,
They barely mention it. Really.
Yeah, it's Aunt May and Uncle Ben, and that's just his family, and that's fine. I quite liked this idea of, as someone who lost their parents at quite a young age, I quite like this idea of letting go of a lionized version of a dead parent, and just being more appreciative of the people who are here for you now.
Yeah.
That kind of chimes with me. I quite like this idea of having a pre-existing link between Peter and Oscorp.
Yeah.
And just like Oscorp has been doing dodgy shit for years.
It also kind of, the way they make the spiders kind of unique to Peter Parker, like he's the only one who could have been Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Because Richard Parker used his DNA in the hybrid spiders.
Yeah.
So the only way the toxin or the venom in the spiders was going to work and self-heal would only be on somebody, and that's his kind of safeguard against people using it or Norman Osborn taking it and stuff.
Yeah.
So and again they go, oh, we're using a radioactive isotope, so technically is a radioactive,
so it is a radioactive spider, but
technically,
it's not,
it's still kind of a super spider, genetically enhanced. And all that. In the Sony hack, there was quite a few weird and wacky things that came out from the emails, and one of them was that they never wanted a black or gay Spider-Man, which was like, okay, right. And I think that was them saying we don't want to do a Miles Morales type thing.
Right, okay.
And I think that was them saying, oh, well, we can't do Miles Morales now because he can't be bitten by the spider. I think that was maybe something like that. I don't know, but there's a lot of weird and wacky shit in those emails. It's on WikiLeaks if you want to read those.
Right, okay. I think I remember seeing something that said, oh, Peter Parker must always be white, he must always be heterosexual.
Yes, correct. Yeah, there was that. There was talk about when The Amazing Spider-Man was first coming out, there was talk about Spider-Man potentially being black, and
I know Donald Glover campaigned pretty hard.
So Marc Bernardin, who was of Fat Man on Batman, know very well. He wrote an article saying, "Why can't Spider-Man be black?" And he suggested Donald Glover, and Donald Glover said, "Yeah, that sounds cool. I'd do that."
Yeah.
And then people were like, racist bullshit.
That's what people do.
Yeah, disgusting kind of racist bullshit came out. And again, I think the Spider-Man, you were talking about toxic fandoms, I think the Spider-Man fandom is fairly toxic. I think the Star Wars one is probably a bit more toxic, but I think Spider-Man is second to probably that, as toxic as it can get.
Yeah.
Not quite sure why, but it is. And another thing as well, Shailene Woodley was supposed to be in the film as Mary Jane.
Mary Jane, yeah.
But she was cut. It was announced. Again, people went mad because she's not. People thought she was not beautiful enough or was not buxom enough to be Mary Jane. So there was a lot of kind of misogynistic bullshit. And I think they felt the film was overpacked as it was, which it is. So they cut her scenes. And I think as well, there's another scene they cut that I was meaning to talk about earlier, but I think that was probably the right decision. Like there was a few scenes with her, and I don't think you set up this next romantic interest while Gwen is dying. I think that was probably the best thing. Another thing, instead of, like I was saying, that box scene, that beautiful box scene between Aunt May and him, Richard Parker was going to return. Oof. So compounding the tragedy of Gwen was him coming back and going, "I'm alive. I've been away because I wanted to protect you, but your mum said you would need us at some point, so I had to come back." Right. And Peter's like, "You're not my dad. Who are you?" Yeah. So they have this whole kind of thing, this antagonistic kind of conversation.
So
eventually,
was that filmed? Or
yeah. It's on the DVD. It's on the Blu-ray.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I will check it out, but I'm glad it wasn't in because that's just one more. That's an unstable element. Yeah, that's adding a big shot of chili powder to the aforementioned tiramisu
it's like,
burger stew combo.
Fuck. Yeah, it's like fuck. Oh fuck! And I think it didn't test very well either. I think most people, obviously explains why he stayed away, and they didn't want Oscorp, looking into him or trying to find him. But I think the audience were like, yeah, but he's been away. It doesn't matter the reason. He's been away. He's been an absentee father. Yeah. And I think deep down in people's emotional core, it just didn't feel right. But he does actually say, he says, "I wanted to save the world, but now I actually think it's your job to save the world." and with great power comes great responsibility. So that's when the line was going to come in,
Right,
and that was him.
I see.
And that was him kind of pulling him out of his depression and his his grief over Gwen. Was him.
Right.
It was him coming back. But yeah, I think both of those decisions were a good decision. I think you can catch some of Woodley in a cafe at the end. She was working at one of the cafes in the film, and it's exactly. I don't know if she's running in there or you see her quite briefly, but she's definitely kind of in some of the shots towards the end in the rhino sequence because they still had that.
Right.
But again, I don't know. I don't think you can go from the Richard Parker thing into that rhino sequence. I don't think it would work. I think the decision they make. Sometimes the studios do make good decisions on occasion.
I think the
filmmakers
were right there.
But yeah,
speaking of iconic Spider-Man love interests, can we show some love to the very little brief flashes we got of Felicity Jones?
Yes,
as Felicia Hardy,
absolutely.
Because that was something that I was like. I think when I first saw this, obviously it was before Rogue One and things like A Monster Call.
Yeah.
So like that was before I got the chance to like fall in love with her as an actor. So like seeing her in this, I'm like, well, that is just a fantastic definition of doing a lot with a little. Which I think she does. I think she just has a really commanding presence in the little scenes she has, and I love that little moment where Harry is he's in that board meeting and he's basically calling everyone cunts. Not in so many words. No. but basically
very much the 20-year-old rich boy privileged. Yeah.
But so everyone's kind of like underestimating Felicia and. So he says, okay, what's your name? Oh, it's Felicia. Okay, you all work for Felicia and Felicia works for me. And she just gives him that little smirk. And I was like, ooh, well played there, Felicity Jones. That's just another little good thing that I think I just hadn't noticed previously.
Yeah, I was saying this while we were kind of coming back. I think there are three main antagonists in this, but I feel like, again, the Rhino is used very sparingly, which I think is a good
he's
thing.
kind of like a bookend device, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So you see him at the start, he's captured by Spider-Man. He's very... Paul Giamatti, I think he said it on a talk show, he was like, I always wanted to be the Rhino. And they were like, right, let's make that dream happen for Paul Giamatti.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which is what he did. And again, he turns up at the end. And that wonderful sequence where Spider-Man returns and Jorge's standing up to him, I think is wonderful. But yeah, there was... I've completely forgot where I was going with that now.
Paul Giamatti, Rhino.
Paul Giamatti, Rhino. Oh, yes. I think the villains are actually better connected. There's a through line for why they team up and what they do and how they need each other, and they both feel like they've been forgotten about. They're invisible people.
It's given room to breathe, and because obviously Electro's taken him fairly early on. And he's administered. He's
Dr. Kafka
administered to that facility where he's basically tortured. And I love that little exchange where it's like, we want to see how powerful you are. It's like, I do too.
Yeah.
that was
that little power bar on the side of his
conduit
head.
thing.
Yeah, which is an indicator of later when they're trying to overpower him, like because he's a battery.
Again, that's just a nice little visual nugget that works.
Absolutely.
I think it's just the fact that okay, so now all of a sudden he's injected himself with this spider venom, and it's accelerated his problem. His problem is degeneration, and I quite like the beautiful little moment with Chris Cooper as Norman Osborn.
Yeah, that's great.
I like the like greeny grey scaly stuff. It's kind of like a bit of an ultimate Spider-Man Green Goblin.
You're not quite as demonic, but
yeah,
somewhere in between. I like that the hair kind of makes the, I don't know what you call it, the wee willy winky.
Yeah, the
hat,
little
the kind
little
of sleepy
nightcap,
elf
kind
cap
of,
or whatever it is.
Cap,
whatever you want to call it. I like that the controls for the suit and the glider are kind of pointed, like the
pointy ears. Yeah.
So, and again, you kind of get in the Goblin without him dressing up as a Goblin,
but it's all kind of like, oh, this is accelerated. I'm going to crawl into this magic science suit.
There is another deleted scene where they're showcasing that, and they're kind of saying it's for people who are in the military military and they're wounded and they need to be taken off the battlefield, and it kind of heals their bodies as they're being carried, and that's what the glider's for.
I think you need more setup for that.
I agree. I 100% agree.
And I think in both versions, in the Sam Raimi and the Marc Webb versions, I think you needed to do more to explain. Okay, so here's this military glider. Why does it look like something a supervillain would fly around on? You know, like why does it have this kind of like quite menacing batwing shape? Why doesn't it look?
In this one, it is like Oscorp is green. It's all green. I even quite like it's weird. I quite like the design of Oscorp because it's got 2 points, like the pointy ears for the goblin.
I didn't notice
at the top of the building.
Well
if you watch it, you kind of, and it's green. And then obviously this is going to be used for the military, so the glider's green, the suit's green. So that kind of somewhat makes a bit more sense. So, but I get what you mean. It does need a bit more something. But again, the film is overstuffed as it is.
It is, yeah. But I just think you could have done little things here and there just to see that better.
And again, I think as well, the problem with this one is that the last film, again, like you said, is Spider-Man Begins. It takes itself very seriously, very dark, very kind of bleak in places. Yeah, the villain is somewhat still a bit cartoony, but it's still taken quite seriously.
Yep.
And I think in this, especially Jamie Foxx pre-transformation is kind of like very Jim Carrey and Batman Forever.
Yeah.
It's like, I love you, Bruce Wayne, and they're like, no, you're an idiot. I hate you, Bruce Wayne. It's very much, and again, it's the Wonder Woman 1984 does it as well.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of a tired trope now a little bit. I feel like, are we really doing this again? I'm kind of like I think the best time it's ever been done is probably Batman Returns for me, when it's Selena Kyle.
Yeah.
I think that's the only time it's really, really worked for me.
I love the speaking of just going back to Electro, one thing I wanted to say really quickly. So I quite like the fact that like Oscorp's thing is like taking animal properties and giving them sort of industrial or military applications. That's quite an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Total bollocks, obviously, but it's a Spider-Man film. So, and I think it's a good launching point for like Spider-Man as a concept.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. I love this idea of how can we harness bioelectricity for renewable energy?
Yeah.
Okay, kind of like it's again bollocks, but makes sense from a narrative perspective. What I don't get is that so we've got this big vat full of industrial electric eels.
Yeah,
I'd maybe put a cover on that. If you've got
it's
cables,
like the Death Star's rail.
Yeah, if you've got cables running above it that technicians are going to need to get to, I would definitely put a cover on that because someone might fall in it and become a super.
I know, right? I know. And again, I like that they use that against Harry because they go, okay, let's have him sign off on it.
Yeah,
and they use that
cover
against
it up,
it. And that's how when he learns about it, he's like, you've been putting it all in, you've framed me. So again, like you're sort of kind of, again, you kind of don't want him to go down this villainous path, but you still kind of relate to him and kind of understand why he does and what he does, what he needs to do. And he uses Electro now to be, finally kind of uses that as a kind of a bargaining chip and as a weapon, but also as a kind of friend. And they make that deal. And then, he's like, and again, it could easily be the Alfred Molina thing and Harry Osborn, like, go kill Spider-Man, get his blood.
Yeah.
But he goes, no, just get me in. I know the spider's down there now, so I can just go there instead. And I even like that talk with Spider-Man and Harry. He could have just not gone.
Yeah,
as Spider-Man, but he does, and he says, "Yeah, but what about this? What about this?"
Yep.
And I like the idea of him saying, Spider-Man is hope, and that wonderful speech that Emma Stone gives, all about, I want you to become hope, and and again, we don't really hear it all. We hear a lot of it at the start, and obviously,
the graduation,
the graduation's
heavy with foreshadowing.
Oh fuck yeah! But
we are young, but someday we will die, and then we won't be around forever, and we're gonna die, and shortly we'll be dead. We've got to enjoy these moments now while we're still alive and not dead.
You've got to remember, again, it's about Captain Stacy. It's not about her, but it like, for her perspective, she's talking about her dad.
No, I get it.
And then, but I think it works at the end because, again, Peter's talking about hope, and he says to Harry, I think Spider-Man gives people hope.
Yeah, no, it's gorgeous. I'm being disingenuous.
I will say, I don't need the Dennis Leary ghost. I could do without that.
Yeah,
that's one of my least favorite things. I think his voice in the back of his head is fine. I don't think you need to see him.
Yeah,
but I get why especially in that final sequence with Electro, because Peter knows this is not going to go well.
Yeah,
And that's why he sees him. He just goes like that. For me, that would have worked just on its own. But I think him keep coming back is
yeah.
I don't know.
I think it
Easiest working day for Dennis Leary though. He just has to stand there.
Yeah, and I do like Dennis Leary as an actor, and I think I think he has this really sort of menacing but charming and affable and funny presence. Have you seen Judgment Night?
Yes, I've covered it on the podcast, my friend.
Oh.
Very, very early on. Very early.
Right. Okay. I will listen to it. But...
4th or 5th episode or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
probably the first. I think it was the first Clone Wars I did actually.
Just iconic villain.
That and Trespass. If you've seen that. Yeah.
Just iconic villain and so charismatic. So like I can't get mad at more Dennis Leary.
No, don't get me wrong.
Even when he is quite literally leering Peter Parker.
Yeah. That was one of the things I was like, I think this is just a bit too much. What did you think to the secret rail station lab thing? Was that a bit too much?
I mean, I don't mind that. The only part of it that really like I don't believe this would happen is that like a college age kid would use Bing as a search engine,
Owned by Sony. Have they got the Sony I/O going as well?
Yeah, I was going to say he's got the Sony laptop.
Got the Sony,
no, I don't.
Wait till you see Madden Web and the product placement in that.
I'm sure it's glorious. No, do you know what? I don't mind it. I think I like it because I just like. I like it when Peter Parker does detective work. Like I remember in the video game, this first Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man video game, there are little cutscenes with elements of him tracking down Green Goblin because he recognizes like an I think it's like on a circuit board or something. And I like Peter Parker doing detective work. Yeah. So I like for that reason alone, I'm not mad at it. I think you could have lifted that out and made room for something else that would have paid off more emotionally.
Sure. Yeah. I kind of feel like this. I feel like the parent angle could have worked in the third film because it'd been like Spider-Man 3. I think in trilogies you tend in the third one to kind of revisit the first film in a sense.
Yeah.
Like most of them, and I feel like they do that with Spider-Man 3 because they go, "Oh, Uncle Ben's death is not quite what we thought."
Yeah,
and I feel like that would have worked better in a third film as opposed to here when it's already a bit full.
Yeah, I think taking something that's familiar and making you see it in a new way is compelling, and indeed how I felt about this film actually. So can we talk about the very bad thing that's beautifully done?
Yes, absolutely.
So for all the fact that Harry turns into Green Goblin doing the Green Goblin cackle way too soon, the actual fight itself is incredible. And
it was going to be a lot more brutal as well. And I think there was a moment. So initially, the Goblin was going to kill her, so he was going to cut the line,
right?
And he was going to kill her. But I think that takes away from that original kind of story that it's kind of his fault, Spider-Man's fault that she dies.
And I think because the whole lesson is you can be doing the exact right thing and still fail.
Fuck up,
There's nothing you could have done differently.
I think he cackled as well. I think he cackled after she died. They realised, or he woke up.
Yeah.
Wasn't unconscious. And I think that was probably too far. I think that was one. I don't think he would cackle at that.
Because, as well, they had that little, Harry and Gwen had that little scene in the lift.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was just kind of nice. You saw like maybe these two characters could be friends.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm being too charitable there, but like I just like that little moment of, it's complicated. He said, of course it's complicated. It's Peter.
Yeah, exactly. Another wonderful scene is the kind of wonderful physical comedy when Gwen is trying to hide. She's, again, like very active in this film. She recognizes Max at the Times Square, and she looks up and tries to find him. They're deleting him. Because they're trying to blame it on Harry and cover it up, make him disappear. And they bump into each other because Peter's there about the blood and the spiders and everything. And they bump into each other, and she's they're hiding in the I'm sorry, I didn't take you to the Bermuda of hiding places.
Yes,
love all that.
Yep.
It's like, oh, you kissed me. It's like, yeah, I couldn't help myself. Anyway, what about London? You're going to London, you go to Oxford, all this sort of stuff. And then he has this wonderful, like Charlie Chaplin-esque physical comedy
where he's trying to stitch up the security guards.
And which I think is wonderful. And it kind of, again, that's almost a bit Sam Raimi.
And the little heel click he does at the end. And I think I actually said, I was just perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. I think it's a really, really lovely and, again, fun scene in a lot of this kind of I almost feel like it's not as much tonal whiplash in this one as there is in Spider-Man 3.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's much more consistent. There are goofy moments.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the goofery is Peter, and especially when he's in the suit.
Yeah.
And
this is for me. This is the best kind of wisecracking Spider-Man.
Yeah. Because again, it has that semi-improvised kind of feel to it. Sorry, I allowed myself to get sidetracked there.
Go on. It's all right.
So
we certainly do.
We were talking about the very bad thing.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, sorry. That was my fault, really. But go on.
And we really should like. I mean, it's 10 years old now at this point, if you can believe it. So
spoilers.
I won't worry that much about spoilers. But I think it visually is handled better than in the comics.
Okay, sure.
Because you have that. You have the fall and you have that frantic, like trying to stop her from falling, but also you have all this. You have the
machinery of the clock tower. You've got the goblin.
So the goblin gets knocked out, so he's not a factor anymore. But she's falling, and time slows down, and you have that beautiful visual of him throwing the web, and the web extending, and it's like it's become that hand, and it's grasping for it, and it's gonna get to it, but it's just not moving fast enough. And I was astonished that the camera actually follows her down, and then you get that boom against the ground. And then she's just hanging there because it's like the web has taken away quite a lot of her momentum, but she still hits the ground. But like I read comics, I know what's happened. But even then, I was like, she could have survived that. There's a chance she could have. Yeah. So I think they do a great. Like even though I know what's happened, I'm like maybe because I'm not ready to let.
Yeah, exactly.
I am not ready to let go of this character yet. I don't. I want to see them because they have that beautiful resolution of okay, we're going to Oxford. You can go to Oxford. I'll go to Oxford with you. There's crime in England, right?
Yeah. Jack the Ripper was never arrested.
Exactly. Yeah. That's beautiful. I adore that he was like he wrote "I love you" in webs on the. That's George Washington Bridge, was it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
one of the bridges, Brooklyn Bridge.
There are a lot of bridges. Yeah, but they do that in Spider-Man 3 as well. Venom does that in the webs as well.
Oh yeah.
Another right. Bit of comparison, but yeah, no, I another little wonderful thing I think Kevin Feige noticed as well was that the clock tower is what it ends. She dies at 121, which was the issue she died in.
Oh, okay,
which is it's good. It's a good little Easter egg. And yeah, I kind of agree, to be honest. Apparently they tested this so many times. Like, how does it work? How does it, because there were times where is the Goblin dead? Is Gwen dead? Are they both alive? What's happening?
Yeah.
And they tried cutting it in different ways. So they were like, no, she is dead. We've got to make sure it impacts, but it's not too gruesome.
Yeah.
Like it was a real balancing act. And I think they did find the best way to present that because it again, like you said, you wish and hope that she's alive because they have this wonderful relationship. And I think that doesn't work if the chemistry isn't there from the two leads.
For sure, yeah.
Like I have to agree. I think again the comic it's a different animal, it's a different medium. But yeah, I think back then it was kind of short, sharp shot.
Yeah, because there was just that little
it's like
little
crit. And again, you're not sure.
Thing,
You're like the snap. I think it is a snap. I think it says snap. And the Goblin literally just like pops her off the top with his glider. Yeah. And again, it's a bit more kind of...
It's much more accidental in this. Sure. And I quite like, actually, that the Goblin doesn't murder Gwen necessarily.
Which I agree. I think that was the right choice.
She fell and he couldn't catch her.
Yeah.
Because I think if he had cackled, then I think, like, Peter could never forgive Harry for that. And I think you need to kind of leave... I can imagine if I'm running the studio, I want to leave that door open for
to come back.
More conflict and potential resolution,
which is why they brought him back for that prison scene where he's planning something, whatever that may be. He's like, I want a small group. This is the plan. We're going to do this, but doesn't go into any detail about it. But that was the reason, because they weren't sure if because he was kind of got the thing around his neck, the web around his neck. So is he dying? Is he dead? Is he been strangled? I'm not sure. But yeah, I think initially as well, when the Goblin cackled, Spider-Man went to beat him to death, like in the original comic. Like he gets angry and then stops himself. Which is what Harry sees, I think, originally, and removes the costume, and they find Norman dead, but it's just Norman, and they assume Spider-Man did it, kind of thing. But I think it's a kind of a masterstroke that they went for it, And I think they pulled it off in the best possible way, which I think it's brave to do that again with the chemistry they already have.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's astounding, really, that they could do what they did. Again, all the parts don't really come together as well as as cohesively as maybe we'd like it. But I think that moment, and again, I think everybody says that moment is.
I was going to say exactly that. Yeah, I think. Also, one thing I want to quickly say: if you make it accidental, like you want the last thing you see to be Peter holding Gwen in his arms.
Yeah.
You don't want it to see him. You don't want it to be him beating the shit out of the goblin because.
And she's just lying
what
there.
is he just going to leave her body there to beat the shit out of the goblin? No, let's not.
No.
So I think they did everything right. I think. What I love is, despite the fact that I think those two films aren't as well remembered as the Raimi trilogy, everyone agrees that the romance works between Peter and Gwen,
100%.
and everyone felt it when Gwen died. Even people who didn't like the film were crushed by the fact that Gwen died. And I'm sure your experience was the same as mine. When you get to No Way Home, where MJ's falling, everyone was like, when it's Andrew's version of Peter that gets to save her.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, when he catches her and has
he's that
tearful moment. And MJ's like, you okay? He's like,
because he's kind of redeemed himself. And he talks about now the third film was going to introduce, apparently Marc Webb is a big fan of Venom.
Okay.
And the third film was going to introduce him in his grief and his anger and his resentment, was going to introduce the symbiote and use that as a kind of third film.
Okay.
And again, introducing, apparently they were going to be made in tandem with the Sinister Six movies, where again, there was
just does not need to be a Sinister Six movie.
I know, but they had a hard-on for the Sinister Six, and they were like, let's get as many villains in as we can.
Because he's walking past, past all those little, there's the vulture wings there, the rhino suit.
But it's not interesting to just go, here have some arms, or here have a rhino suit, or here have vulture wings. It's not interesting.
Making the octopus arms something that's given to Otto Octavius just doesn't work for me.
Doesn't seem right. Like the rhino, I'm like, okay, that's fine, but those particular things are very specific, and I don't know if I bought it, but they were talking about the Sinister Six movie having various villains in there that would have a redemptive arc, kind of like a Thunderbolts type thing. They'd start as villains, but Dr. Octopus would be like the main antagonist. Apparently there was an idea to bring Gwen back, but using the Carnage symbiote. She was going to be
no.
There was talk about it. The Sinister Six finale was going to be in the Savage Land, which I don't know if they had the rights to, because that's an X-Men thing, really.
Okay.
But apparently Spider-Man would have rode a dinosaur.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, you don't. Here's the thing. If you've got a filmmaker who passionately thinks, I've got an amazing idea for a Sinister Six movie, okay. But if you've got a studio that's like, right, I want to milk this franchise dry, what have we got? Sinister Six. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
No, because you're not. It's not like you're not making it for the right reasons. You're making it for
purely
greed,
financial. I think Sony's made a lot of those films for licensing and for greed.
I mean, it's like obviously, like it's capitalism. That's what we've got.
There was talk about like an interdimensional threat and Norman Osborn coming back in a new form. And
here's the thing: I don't think introduce Venom because Spider-Man because Peter's grieving for the loss of Gwen. Kind of get it. I think if you're going to do that, do it in the 12-year gap in between Gwen's death and the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2. Because what's beautiful about the ending of that film is that's him getting his closure. That's him putting his feelings in that box. And he's never going to not miss Gwen, but he realizes that his responsibility outweighs his grief.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't think it quite works with him getting over it only to go back into it.
Exactly. And I thing is, I know that like in real life, grief isn't neat.
No.
And you might think you've achieved closure and then you have a relapse. And I get that. I do. But I just don't think it's a story that needs to be told, to be honest.
On that lovely note, let's compare the films. Let's do it. This is a long podcast, guys, but I don't mind. It's all good. It's all Spider-Man.
I'm happy if you're happy.
It's all good stuff. Right, so we have various categories. As you know, Dan, as you like this version of the podcast.
I do.
We have 5 categories: writing, acting, music, cinematography, and direction. And we do have some extras if we tie them in any way, if we struggle. Because I think that's the first time when we did our Clone Wars for Cap and Civil War and Batman vs Superman, we did have a tie. And I think that's the only time we had a tie.
We need to bust out the tiebreaker.
So we might need to break out the tiebreakers again. But let's go. So out Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which film is better written?
Oof. Okay, because
it's Kurtzman and Orky, I think, for Amazing Spider-Man 2, because they love films with super blood, apparently.
Yeah. It's a tricky one because I just feel like Amazing Spider-Man 2 is just like throwing
all these ideas
when you know how much has been dropped.
Yeah, and cut from
it's
it.
amazing. It's as cohesive as it is.
Yeah, exactly. So many characters, so many plot threads, so many things. There was like a scene where Mencken was killed by Harry and meets up with Felicity. There's a scene apparently where Harry was drunk driving as well.
Okay.
I think that would have been interesting if Spider-Man caught him drunk driving and stopped him.
That would have been,
that would have been the introduction. Like, who is this guy?
Oh, it's a tricky one, isn't it? So, who wrote the screenplay for Spider-Man 3? Do you remember? David Cat?
Alan, I think it's Ziskin or is it, someone like that. You know what? You do that. You have a talk about it, and I'll find who did it.
Okay, so I think it really is a tricky one because I think Amazing Spider-Man 2, by dint of the fact that I don't know, because the things that work about it are because of the characters and their interactions. And if a lot of it's improvised, the actors, and if a lot of it's improvised, then it's hard to know what credit the writers with.
There was a fair bit of improvisation on both films.
Okay, I think that because they both have such little beautiful moments, I think I'm inclined to say, as chaotic and as fucking everything as it is, that Amazing Spider-Man 2 is better written. And my rationale is I'm comparing in my head the Aunt May boxing up Uncle Ben's possessions scene with Aunt May telling Peter about the day that Uncle Ben proposed to. Because I think they're both beautiful, soulful films where the writing is at its best. I think, and it's tricky because it's very much the tone that Raimi was going for. I feel like the melodrama of Spider-Man 3 just makes it feel a little bit more hackneyed because I think in a lot of the Spider-Man films, the Raimi Spider-Man films, a lot of the dialogue is trading cliches almost.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not mad at it because it's very much...
Yeah, there's tropes and cliches we all enjoy. You know, we notice them when we see them, but sometimes when you see them, you go, no, actually, I quite enjoy that cliche.
And it is very much, it does harken back to that heightened kind of 60s Stanley dialogue. Okay. So that's why it works.
So it was Sam Raimi, Ivan Raimi, and Alvin Sargent wrote the Spider-Man 3 film.
Right, okay.
So I think Alvin Sargent, if I remember rightly, did a lot of the Venom stuff, added a lot of the Venom material, and kind of made it more palatable for Sam to deal with. And he kind of pitched it because I think he liked the character, but Sam was obviously resistant.
Okay. This is entirely subjective, but I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 is better written. But I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know. It's very difficult.
Yeah, like you've compared it with those two lovely scenes with Aunt May. I'm thinking about the third act. And I feel the third act works a bit better and more seamlessly in Amazing Spider-Man 2 than Spider-Man 3. I think, again, they set up the villains, the intertwining stories that kind of work somewhat more naturally and make a bit more sense. The themes, I think, work a bit better as well. They're more consistent and work. And, you know, them teaming up seems more... Venom, the demonic shadow monster, and the tortured, you know, guy who's hard done by and hard on luck with a sick kid doesn't really make sense to me. You know, there's a lot of team ups in comic book storylines, like Poison Ivy and Mr. Freeze does not make sense.
No,
and I see, I'm like, yeah, but they're too. Yeah, I get that you want that character, and you're trying to find a way to bridge them.
And they kind
together.
of like, you freeze the world, I'll grow a new one.
Right, okay.
Yeah, all right. But it's like, if you compare that with, say, like Batman Returns, you've got
exactly
Penguin and Catwoman.
You've got the feminist and the misogynist, even though they don't like each other and very vehemently don't want to work with each other, they have a common enemy.
Yeah.
So it makes more sense. And again, they betray each other in the end anyway. So it's, which is, evidently going to happen with a lot of these teams. Weirdly, it doesn't happen in this one. Usually the villains do betray each other in these kind of scenarios, but this is interesting. Again, a tired trope maybe that they wanted to avoid potentially. I'm not sure, but I think this third act works slightly better and makes more sense and just feels a bit more natural than all of a sudden, I want to kill him too, Sandman. Like, how do you know you're not Spider-Man for a start? Because he's only just got rid of the black suit. And why would he team up? What reason does he have? He needs money for his sick daughter. There needs to be a better reason for them to team up, which again is in the video game.
It's hard, because you don't know what is screenplay problems and what is editing and reshoot.
Yeah, and then Bernard coming in and going, "Oh yeah, by the way," just feels like fuck.
Yeah, no, that's just stupid on so many levels.
So there's that scene and that scene for me are just kind of I think the rest of it still works for me, but it's those particular scenes because we need to have them in order to get to the good stuff. And I think it works better and is more seamless in Amazing Spider-Man 2. So I'm in complete agreement with you.
Brilliant. Okay, that's good. I like it when we're in it.
Number one. Okay, next one is acting.
Ooh.
I think this is a tough one, this one.
It is a tough one. But again, just Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone, there's nothing that touches them.
No.
Because not only is their chemistry amazing, they just make such good choices. And
it feels effortless as well. Like it feels like they lived together, they've been together, which they had, so, and I think that helps a lot and carries a lot of that weight. Again, I think all the performances, again, the tones are very different films tonally. But I think the actors are doing great in both. But that chemistry is hard to argue with.
I mean, there's amazing acting. I don't think there's any bad acting in Spider-Man 3. I think Tobey Maguire is just consistently excellent. Even though I think you can tell which bits he's comfortable doing and which he's not. I think Kirsten Dunst, I feel like she's kind of reaching the end of the rope. I think she's getting I can feel her getting impatient with the character. If that makes sense when I watch it. She's like,
why is she making these choices again? Or why is she still with him? Why is she putting up with this?
Yeah, I feel like she is a better actor than that version of the character allows her to be.
I agree.
But again, I don't want to imply that it's bad writing or bad characterization, because it's not. Bryce Dallas Howard, again, just like you get the tip of the eye. She's so warm as Gwen. She's so warm, and she's just like got this lovely sort of golden retriever, bouncy, affable energy. But again, I don't really get a sense of who she is, what she's about. What does she want?
What's her drives?
Is she romantically interested in Peter, or does she just see him as a good friend who like helps her out? Like, is she like? She's not. She doesn't really have enough. No. She doesn't have a through line.
No,
she's just kind of there now and then.
She's somehow hosting these huge celebrations of Spider-Man. You know, her dad's there. Apparently, he had more scenes as well. I think she had more scenes. She was supposed to be in the finale. But I feel like there's no drive or reason for her to do what she does. She just kind of happens to be places and happens to be there. Yeah. But again, that's not her fault. That's just the writing.
Again, I'm happy to give this point to Amazing Spidey 2, just because I feel like even though it is chaotic, I think everyone understands their individual assignment, even though they don't coalesce into something.
If I was going off like villain performances, I think my favorite would be Sandman. I think that just for me, just nails that version of that character.
Yeah, I really like Thomas Hayden Church. He's kind of like
stepped off the comic book page. Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, it's a striped shirt. It's not hard to do, but I feel like he still manages to bring a lot to a character that on the page is pretty basic and could be quite bland. I understand why he's not the main antagonist at the end, because I don't think you could have a Spider-Man antagonist where it is the Sandman at the end, because he's not an out-and-out villain, I think. Which I'm glad they had another villain, but I don't think they needed three. That was the issue.
I agree.
And that's initially what sold him on that, was having that Vulture Sandman prison relationship, which again could have worked, and again they were trying to do that in the fourth film. But yeah, I think you're right. I can't. If you just go off the romantic interests, again, look at that kind of. Again, yeah, they've got chemistry, but those kind of scenes of them just dicking about in the apartment,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, like it's just sickly sweet for me. It's too saccharine and
Oh, you mean
sentimental.
Harry and MJ?
Yeah, Harry and MJ,
yeah.
all that. It was just like, ugh, I don't buy it. It's horrible. I think, not that James Franco's a good guy or a nice guy. We won't get into that, but I think his acting is, I don't know, I kind of don't buy him as the overly friendly. When he's overly friendly, I kind of don't buy it.
Yeah.
It's like, bump my head,
Something just doesn't quite sit right with his performance.
That's why I thought it would be better if he was lying, if he's putting it on.
Yeah.
That's why I felt like initially when he bumped his head, I was like, oh, this super soldier serum. Oh, one little knock on your head and now you're out. I don't believe you.
Yeah.
But it was true. It did end up being true.
I think of all the shades of Harry Osborn you get in that film, none of them quite work.
Yeah, and again, I feel like Harry in Amazing Spider-Man 2 is rushed. I think there's something there. I think there's definitely something there. But I think what Spider-Man 3 has over him is that he's been in previous two films.
Yeah.
Like, Dane DeHaan has to do quite a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah,
and
big
like,
time, yeah.
And bringing that friendship back while also being menacing and sickly and desperate and upset and ill. And I think he does that very well. And I think there's a lot of elements. And again, it feels almost a bit more Green Goblin-y than the Night Surfer. Like the Night Surfer,
I've just realised I love that little moment where so Spider-Man refuses to give Harry Osborn his blood and Harry Osborn just loses his shit at him. And Peter just jumps and web swings out the window. And Harry's just tearing the room apart and he's screaming, "You're a fraud, Spider-Man!" But Peter's like right there.
Yeah,
he's right there clinging to the wall, like in tears.
Yeah. It's like, yeah. And again, also, I wanted to mention, I think the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit is my favourite of all the Spider-Man suits for me.
I mean, that talk about like just comic book come to life, yeah.
Absolutely.
And as well,
the big friendly eyes I like.
The big friendly eyes, and I think just because Andrew Garfield has like quite a tall, lean, gangly body, I think when you see him doing the web swinging, it's kind of like almost Todd McFarlane-esque.
Yeah. There's
like
such great all the swinging sequences. I think are the best Spider-Man's ever looked on screen. I love Homecoming, I love all that, but I just think the swinging sequences in this film just absolutely nail that version of the character. But yes, I think acting has to go to The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay, so that's two
for two.
No.
Music. Now, this is an interesting one. I forgot to mention. I mentioned earlier that the composers left. Danny Elfman left this film and did not talk to Sam Raimi for years.
Yeah, I know they fell out.
Yeah,
but I don't quite know why.
So the composer he uses on this one did work on the previous score in Spider-Man 2 without Danny Elfman's knowledge.
Oh, okay.
So Sam Raimi made that decision. He said, I don't quite like this. Can you do something about it? Danny Elfman wasn't informed, so he said, I'm not coming back. But then they did team up again for the Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange.
Of course they did, yeah.
Of course, a very Sam Raimi-esque film, which I think, again, is unfairly maligned, I think, as an MCU film. I really enjoyed that one.
I really enjoyed it too. Yeah, I enjoyed it. In fact, yeah, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Christopher Young's score is really good. I think he does a good job of building on what Elfman did while adding that. I like the symbiote theme. That's like melodramatic. It's dark, but it's playful and fun.
The music for the Sandman scene, I think, that's a gorgeous scene. I think a marvel in special effects at the time.
Yeah, I'm already. Yeah, Spider-Man 3 is one on score just for that. The score in that sequence alone is so heartbreaking,
so evocative,
heartbreaking for a character that we haven't really gotten to know.
Purely CGI
for a performance, it feels like the same character, but it's all digital, and it's at first it's just fucking rocks banging into it, tiny rocks banging into each other, but. I remember getting tearful in that bit.
I think
when we're in the cinema.
That was Bryce Dallas Howard's favourite scene as well, and a lot of people, love that scene. And I think rightly so. I think people remember that if they remember anything. I think for Spider-Man 3, if you remember any scene, it's Sandman's birth.
Yeah,
and in Amazing Spider-Man 2, it's Gwen's death.
Yeah,
I think those are the two kind of standout scenes. If you come away and remember anything, it's those two. I quite like the score for Amazing Spider-Man 2. Of course, there's a lot of people involved. I do quite like that opening score, the that swinging stuff. I love that. It's got Hans Zimmer on there. You know, you're a big fan of him.
Off the amazing work that James Horner.
Yeah, I love the James Horner score.
That first Amazing Spider-Man has a fucking amazing score.
Yeah,
and the Spider-Man theme.
Oh,
you don't really hear much of the Spider-Man theme in the second one, but that like James Horner Spider-Man theme is absolute.
But I do still like this one. I like the electro, I like the EDM kind of stuff they're doing. I like Pharrell Williams and Junkie XL and Johnny Marr.
Yeah.
all kind of contributing this. They called themselves the Magnificent Six on this score. And they're left listed. There's a couple of other people involved. I can't remember their names, but yeah, I like that. I like that kind of thing. I'm going to go Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, so tie on that one.
Okay.
Tie on that one. Okay, here we go.
So do they both get half a point?
Yeah, let's say half a point. Okay, so cinematography.
Ooh. That's a tricky one because they both have gorgeously shot moments.
Yeah. I'm thinking about that. I'm thinking about that Times Square sequence.
Yeah,
a lot. I think the lighting, the way it's depicted, again, all done on a set, a lot of CGI involved. But for me, I think it really just everything about that scene, that moment, that all of that kind of works. And there's so much stuff going on. There's Spider-Man like pulling guys. And I think it's a good representation of Electro's power and what he can do, what he's capable of.
Yep.
And I think it's visually interesting. The audio, again, it's his brains being communicated through the electrical lines, and there's a lot going on in that scene. And I think, but it all kind of comes together really well.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what's the
equivalent?
What's the best looking scene in both of those films?
Would it be the clock tower, the church tower?
I was thinking the clock tower in Spider-Man 3. Yeah.
I do like the big Sandman. I do like the giant kind of golem Sandman. I think that looks pretty good.
I'm just thinking like I'm trying to be
visually.
I'm trying to be like what's cinematography and what's visual effects.
Sure.
So I know it's all like
they come together in a sense in a lot of ways, but
and especially when you're talking about these kinds of films which are very visual effects heavy, it's a tricky one.
I will say I think the cinematography in the Bully Maguire, Goblin Jr. scene, I think is quite effective.
Yeah,
I think that's a quite well shot sequence, and again it's sharp and quick and jerky, and it's almost like they're having a real fist fight, like friends having a real fist fight.
Yeah, and the way it's edited. And I quite like, it's not really related to cinematography, but I like how they're in their civilian clothes, but they've got their costumes on underneath.
And
so like little strips of their civilian clothes get cut away. And,
the sound design in that with the blades coming out.
Zing,
zing,
and then dung into the wood. Yeah.
I love that.
So if we're talking about cinematography as kind of the whole mise en scène,
I'll tell you what. It's quite a similar sequence. Is when Gwen falls. I think that's a really good sequence.
Yeah,
I think that's quite good because it's him diving
and the visual language of the clock tower. Is very gothic and it's kind of
because they explain they built it into the modern hydroelectric plant off the back of the old one. Which is why the clock tower. Because it seems stupid. It seems weird that those two things are meshed together, but it kind of is. Kind of the old world and the new world kind of merging this super scientific world.
Yeah, I think in Spider-Man 3 there's quite a lot of like nice sort of like sunset-y shots.
Oh yeah.
A lot of golden hour shots.
Yeah. I mean the jazz dance sequence,
the jazz room, the jazz dance sequence.
Yeah, that's the jazz room.
I'm just thinking about little things like the scene where Peter and MJ are in the park, and MJ, like Harry's told MJ to break up with Peter.
That's a good one.
That's really like beautifully shot.
I like the flashbacks with Sandman that are told in black and white with Uncle Ben, and I love that we see like Peter Parker's assumed perspective of that shooting, which is like very angry and menacing and evil. He's like guns him down, and then we see it again, but from Sandman's perspective, which is like it's an accident.
Can we make this another draw?
Do it. Let's do it. Go on. So 2 draws, but 2-2 Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay.
So amazing. So it's 3-1 now, isn't it?
Yeah. So 3-1. Yes. Yeah. Well, 3-2. So 2. There's 2
Spider-Man
draws.
3 has had 2 half marks.
Okay. Cool.
So it's 1.
Yeah. So we'll do that. We'll do that. Direction.
Oh, it's a tricky one.
Now Sam Raimi knows how to direct.
Yeah.
And he's directed many things, and he has. much like, various auteurs, he does have a style. He does have you can see what he does. I don't know Marc Webb very well. I have seen 3 of his films. I've not seen any more than that. So I can't really say what he does is necessarily different or interesting than maybe another director in his place, potentially. I'm not sure. I like Sam Raimi. I like his interesting kind of, like you said, the zero budget, cardboard flapping, cameras on planks and stuff.
Yeah, I think with Sam Raimi, it's like he has a very distinct visual sensibility, but it's not like a Tim Burton or a Zack Snyder or a Wes Anderson kind of thing. You know what I mean?
True.
It's like it's more in like his compositions.
Yeah.
And Sam Raimi, very much about the angles.
Yeah,
he chooses some very
some great ones. When he does the
Dutches
Dutch angles
and twists.
and
Like you say, I think Marc Webb's strength is in being very much an actor's director.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
100%.
he doesn't have that same sort of visual identity. It's really tricky because they're doing very different things, but they're both doing them really, really well.
Yeah, I agree.
However, in the interests of making it a bit interesting, I'm happy to give this point to Spider-Man 3.
Oh, yeah. I think I'm with you. Because again, that visual language, we're again a bit more familiar with it as well.
Yeah,
he's done the last 2 Spider-Man installments, so he has a kind of a leg up, I think, in regards to. Again, Marc Webb's previous film looks very different from this.
It looks and feels
very
different. Yeah.
So it could feel like there's 2 different directors. I think Sam has a consistency between all of these films, and then this one does, skew a little bit darker because of the subject matter and stuff.
Yeah, although ironically, when I think about the Amazing Spider-Man films, I remember the first one being a lot darker, just literally.
Yeah, quite literally, because that's the idea.
Shadows.
And they wanted that. They wanted that idea or that feel to it because of everything was being a bit darker and stuff. And
do you know if the Amazing films were shot on film or if they were shot digitally?
I think I know this. I think the first one was digital, but the second one was film.
Really?
Yeah, apparently.
I would have thought the other way around.
Yeah, but I think that's it. I can't be 100% off the top of my head, but I did read something about them changing from digital to film. I think it was the opposite way around.
Okay, interesting. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Let's go with Spidey 3.
Spidey 3. Okay. So I've lost track. So we had.
So it's 3-2 now.
3-2. Okay.
So Spider-Man had 2 and 2 halves to make 3.
Yeah.
Spidey 3 had 2 halves and 1 to make 2.
Okay.
So it's 3-2.
3-2.
So it's getting closer.
Okay. Do you want to do a tiebreaker? Should we do a tiebreaker just to be sure?
I'm more than happy to do one more category.
Let's do it. This podcast is running long. Let's make it run longer. So I'm going to hit my dice app, and that's going to decide what category we're going to do next.
Let's do this.
Okay. I won't go over the categories, but we'll just surprise it. Okay. Here we go. Category 2, which is special, visual, or practical effects.
Ooh. Okay. This is very, very difficult because all I can think about is that incredible Sandman bird sequence from Spidey 3. But then the extraordinary electro fight, the visual effects there just pop amazingly.
So cool.
I think the visual language, even though like the character of Green Goblin is very rushed, the visual language of the design I think worked really well, and I think they do a great job of distinguishing it from the previous Goblin while still being very recognizable. Obviously, as we've said, the Amazing Spidey 2 suit is probably the best one.
Yeah, I agree.
That said, I love the Spider-Man 3 black suit. I love, for all the fact that, again, Venom felt shoehorned in. I love what they did with the design. If we make this a tie, that would be 3.5 to 2.5.
Oh, okay.
So
that would still have a winner.
We still have a clear winner.
Still have a winner.
So that's what I'm thinking. This is a tie
I think
as well.
I think the representation of Sandman and the representation of Elektra are both pretty good. Really quite good, visual language, and they're so different as well that I couldn't really say I think those are the ones that stick out to me. There are some kind of ropey CGI scenes in, early on with the Harry and Peter fight early on, and some of the moments, because it's huge.
You can clearly see when Tobey Maguire becomes a digital
character.
model,
but again, I feel like I can't really use that as an example because it's an age thing purely. It's purely an age thing. But yeah, I do really like the Venom mouth and everything. That really works for me. The eyes, not so much. The eyes, I feel are probably a little too cartoony for me. But I think the jaw and the mouth is good. Yeah, so I think, if I'm right, after all those, The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yep, it's a winner by a clear point.
Clear 1 point. Wow. That is it. I didn't foresee this happening necessarily, but I'm very glad for the discussion.
Yeah, I hope that because it's not really about who wins.
No,
it's about hopefully getting people to reappraise these films, which are not generally fondly remembered.
No.
And just appreciating that sometimes artistic visions get compromised.
Yes.
Sometimes difficult choices need to be made in ways that affects the film negatively, and I think there is just a lot of good intention in both films that shines through the corporate fuckery.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Andrew Garfield is a big kind of example of that, him coming out and talking about it time and time again, and how he was a little disappointed. And he talked, I think they did I think Variety did Actor on Actor with Amy Adams and him.
Okay.
And they talked about their difficult times kind of representing these classic characters.
Well, that'd be interesting.
And serving that's trying to serve that story, but the interests of the studios is not necessarily on the character or necessarily the story, and that's what happened. And again, it was a disappointing for both of them in different ways.
I hear you.
And again, you know that very well. You know that whole story very well.
Yep.
But yeah, and him kind of listening to him talk about it is quite. I think it's been healing for him, and I think it's been healing for everyone else.
Yeah.
And they come back, and now we hear, there's still rumblings that we may still even get an Amazing Spider-Man 3.
I mean, I'm so glad that both actors got to take another bite of the apple.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I think No Way Home is a good film in its own right, and I think it stands on its own.
Sure.
But I love that it's been used to relitigate how people feel about Andrew's Spider-Man in particular.
Absolutely. I think some people have reappraised the Star Wars prequels. People have reappraised the Alien movies, and things like that. And I feel like these are due for reappraisal. I think both of these absolutely are due. I think if you rewatch them, this, they've all tried, we've all been involved in things that didn't quite work out as we wanted them to, artistic endeavors, whatever they may be. Everyone knows that project at work or something, so I understand. And again, there's a lot of love here from the actors and the people that they worked with. And again, you don't hear much love for the producers but the people who are the creatives and the talent behind it, they are very supportive of each other and caring. But again, the stuff you hear about from these actors, be it negative or be it positive, it's not on the people that are the directors or the people that are being fully creative. There are choices that have been taken away from these creators, and they feel that they have to do it, and they've tried their best to make those things happen.
Yeah.
And, the studios at the end of the day have the money, they have the power to say, don't do this, do this, include this character, don't include this character.
And as well, I think we need to remember that producers and directors come at a project from very different angles.
Exactly, yeah.
Because whereas directors are dealing with actors, they're dealing with,
spinning a lot of plates.
With gaffers, they're dealing with, cinematographers. Producers dealing with venture capitalists who want to see return on investment.
Bang for their buck.
So a lot of their job is kind of risk mitigation. So it's like, okay, we've got this data from these studies, and we've got demographic data on this. We know this is what people like, this is what people want to see. This did well last year, so you can visually see where the friction is between the two, the creative and business impulses.
Absolutely, 100%. And I would have loved to go over more details and more behind the scenes Easter eggs and links and stuff, and what Kevin Feige thought of it, and all these different things. But we don't have time. This is already overlong, but we have talked about it en masse. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. But I do have some listener comments before we go out.
Oh, yeah, please.
So we have Mike Burton of Genuine Chit Chat. So I've asked what they think of the films and who would win in this Clone Wars. He says, it's hard as I think Amazing Spider-Man 2's brutal ending really hits hard. While Spider-Man 3's first half is pretty good, it just gets worse and worse the closer it gets to the end. I think Amazing Spider-Man 2 is probably the better movie, but it is close.
Thank you, Mike. Brilliant comment. And I think your views are quite well aligned with mine.
Absolutely. Angry Andy, here we go.
Hit me, Andy.
Would agree with Mike. Spider-Man 3 limps into stupidity and too much going on in that final third. It also becomes criminally forgettable, except for that dreadful screeching waste that is Venom. Amazing Spider-Man 2's first off is a waffling mess of, again, just too many ideas, insufficient execution. That, again, is criminally forgettable. It is saved only by that ending, but it wasn't good enough to fulfill the promise of a series that in hindsight came too quickly after Tobey Maguire and was ultimately not needed despite how good Andrew Garfield is. They should have just done a James Bond type change of actor and continued on from Spider-Man 3 and Maguire. Both heavily flawed, both rubbish on their own merits. I won't watch them again.
Again, like, you can appreciate someone's point of view without sharing it, and I that's a quality polemic from Angry Andy. That's fine.
Yeah. He said, sorry, I mean, I kind of misread that, but he meant like continue on without Tobey Maguire, but with the Spider-Man 3 franchise. Yeah. I misread that, but yes. And then Math, I'm going to echo what's been said. Spider-Man 3, poor villains, just adding more doesn't make it better. The Sandman seems to be a story that wasn't finished. They wanted the symbiote in there, which leads to that emo Peter and that dance down the street. A really poor, underdeveloped Venom. Just too many ideas executed badly. Amazing Spider-Man 2's ending is mostly what people remember, but once again, villains that are forgettable. It's a shame that when they tested the Sinister Six, but it wasn't meant to be. Oh, I think he meant to tease. He said tease. Right. Tease the Sinister Six, but it wasn't meant to be. Spidey is best when he's up against it. And why Far From Home works best as he's struggling, and at the end, when all looks lost for him, he's lost so much, but he still, in the end, does the right thing.
Fucking beautifully stated. Yeah, very eloquent.
Wonderful. Right. I usually list my patrons, but we've gone on far too much, but I love you all, and I mention you on every other podcast. So I will not mention you here, but because just to save time. But I love you. Thank you for your continued donations. It's very much appreciated, and it helps Prattle World keep on turning. And yes, that is the end of our podcast. Anything else you'd like to end with, Dan?
Just that it's been a genuine pleasure watching and talking about these films with you. I will always return to Prattle World whenever you need me. Like Brandon Routh's Superman, I'm always around. Just, like the Dan signal. I'm mixing my metaphors quite a lot.
Are you watching me through windows? Creepily watching me.
Always. You live on the top floor of your building as well, so it's like quite difficult to climb that high. But where there's a will, there's a way. Dan.
I've got one window, so pretty noticeable if you're up there, I think. But
that's fine. I'm always there, usually masturbating.
I appreciate it. Just like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, you're following me because it means you're close to me while still being so far apart.
That's generally why I do it, yeah.
All right, guys. We'll leave you there, but thank you again for tuning in. I know it's been a long one, but I think it's been a good one as well. So thanks again, and as always, prepare for prattle.